Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Kathy Lamb. Kathy Lamb lived in an affluent area of Palm Beach. Kathy had a challenging childhood. Her parents divorced when she was young, and she lived with her father. During her teenage years, her mother was absent, which took a significant emotional toll on her. She was self-conscious about her weight, feeling larger than her peers. Fortunately, her stepmother was kind and supportive. Recognizing Kathy's insecurities, she helped her build her confidence, and over time, Kathy became more confident. She started playing sports and trying to lose weight. Kathy was very smart and kind, which helped her make friends in high school. She was active and cheerful, and her problems seemed to disappear when she was with her friends. One of those friends was Jeff. They met when he was 17 and she was 16, and they quickly felt a special connection. Their relationship continued even after they graduated. 2 years later, they secretly married, surprising their families. When their parents found out, they thought the couple was too young to make such a serious decision, but the couple was determined to stay together, despite family pressure. It seemed like the newlyweds had a bright future ahead of them. Jeff worked hard at a local repossessed car park, while Kathy found work as a pharmacist at a pharmacy. She had the necessary education and wanted to advance in the field. Over the years, Jeff remained a tow truck driver, while Kathy became a top pharmacist. A year later, she was offered a job as a district planner for distributing drugs to pharmacies, an opportunity she eagerly accepted. They achieved their dream of owning a home and enjoyed 12 happy years there until a devastating tragedy occurred. On June 15, 2004, Jeff returned home from work at around 7 p.m. He intended to invite his wife to dinner. However, as soon as he entered, he was horrified to see blood all over the hallway, running down the walls. The gruesome evidence of blood splatter and brain matter terrified him. As he called 911, he struggled to speak and held back tears. Initially, the operator mistook his cries for those of a woman, but Jeff eventually plucked up the courage to describe his home, which now looked like the set of a horror movie. At the end of the corridor, there was a significant amount of blood on one wall, as if it had been splattered. Facing this wall, about 1.5 meters away, similar splatters were visible on the opposite wall, and they extended down the stairs leading to the second floor. On the upper level, in the midst of the gruesome scene, lay 30-year-old Kathy, who was unresponsive. The operator attempted to guide Jeff over the phone to provide first aid, but Kathy's injuries were so severe that there was nothing that could be done. When the police arrived, they were taken aback by the horrific sight. It was one of the most brutal crime scenes they had ever encountered. Kathy's body showed multiple severe head injuries from heavy objects. Her skull and face were so badly damaged that they appeared completely disfigured. Although the murder weapon was not found at the scene, a thorough laboratory analysis determined that it was likely a long, heavy object with a hexagonal shape or similar features. Jeff mentioned that he had tried to call his wife several times after 5 p.m. but received no answer, which he found unusual. Concerned, he rushed home to meet her. It turned out that not only Kathy was injured, the couple had 3 large dogs in the house, Jeff's dog and his wife's 2 dogs. Tragically, both of his wife's pets were discovered badly beaten and lying on the floor next to their deceased owner. They had suffered severe head injuries and were barely alive. Unfortunately, the injuries were so extensive that the veterinarians had to euthanize the dogs to relieve their suffering. In a shocking turn of events, Jeff's dog was found locked in his owner's bedroom. Paws from all 3 dogs were found at the scene, along with blood that police believed did not come from the animals. They suspect the blood may have come from a struggle with the killer. The blood has been sent for analysis to determine its source and whether it can help the investigation, and they await the results. Police are uncertain whether the blood on the dogs came from Kathy or whether they fought with the attacker to protect her, resulting in their fatal injuries. Police found the dogs unharmed after the woman had been killed and the fight had begun. The amount of blood on the animals suggests that they had seriously injured the attacker, possibly lacerating an arm or leg. This means that the attacker would have bled profusely, possibly from an open wound, and that he would have sought medical attention at a hospital. The attacker's intentions remain unclear. He may have acted recklessly or out of a deep hatred for his victim, ignoring the large dogs that lived with the family. After examining the crime scene, the police still lacked any concrete leads. They had to wait for the autopsy results to gather more information. In the meantime, they checked all the local hospitals for the injured attacker. Several suspicious people came in with injuries that were found to be unrelated to the incident, as their injuries did not match those of a dog bite. The police began talking to local residents in the hope that someone had seen suspicious activity at Kathy's home or had noticed the criminal fleeing, possibly injured. Unfortunately, no one observed anything unusual. They were also trying to find a motive. Robbery seemed unlikely given the many valuables in the family's home. Only the gold earrings with diamonds that the Kathy was wearing during the attack were missing, while everything else remained untouched. Even the money, which was clearly visible, was not taken. It seems unlikely that a robber would ignore such an opportunity. There were no indications of a break-in, the furniture was undisturbed, drawers were not opened, and belongings were not scattered about, as thieves typically do when they search for valuables. This led the police to explore alternative motives and various theories. The forensic expert determined that the murder occurred between 4:30 p.m. and 5 p.m. Jeff, the first suspect who found the scene, had a strong alibi. At that time, he was on the job and was seen by numerous co-workers. Additionally, he showed no signs of injuries that would typically result from a struggle with the dogs. Just as police were about to clear Jeff of suspicion, an unknown young woman arrived at the family home. Joy Steele came to the house and introduced herself as Jeff's fiancée, which surprised the police, especially since Jeff had been crying earlier. The police found this an interesting case, as a man who had just lost his wife was being comforted by his mistress, with whom he had been in a serious relationship for a long time. This revelation made the case seem even more suspicious. 7 years into their relationship, Kathy discovered Jeff's infidelity. Despite this, they remained together and did not divorce. Kathy forgave him and even encouraged him to end the affair, leading to their reconciliation and continued life together just before the tragic incident. Police are considering whether a love triangle may have been a motive for the crime. Jeff had a strong motive for killing his troubled wife. That doesn't necessarily mean Jeff killed Kathy himself. He may have convinced someone else to do it. The police discovered a third dog locked in one of the rooms, which was unharmed. This was peculiar, especially given the serious injuries of the other 2 dogs belonging to the Kathy. Did the criminal truly hate her to the extent that he chose to ruin everything she cherished? The police needed to find answers to these questions. In the meantime, one of the police was questioning Jeff's mistress, Joy Steele, at the location of the incident. Joy shared her and Jeff's future plans. They planned to move away after a while Jeff planned to quit his job. Joy had a solid alibi. Joy, who was apparently working at a restaurant during the time of the murder, was present, and multiple people could confirm this. In addition, Joy had no injuries on her body. Although the suspicious couple could not have been directly involved in the murder due to their alibis and their lack of injuries, the police have not ruled them out as suspects given the serious circumstances surrounding the crime. They had a strong motive for their plan. The investigation into the crime and the hiring of the killer continues, with the police focusing on identifying potential enemies or those who may have wanted to harm Kathy. However, Kathy's friends and relatives have been unable to identify any enemies, with the exception of her husband. That same day, another suspect emerged. Jeff had another mistress named Lisa. A few weeks before the murder, Lisa's husband, Ray, discovered them together when he came home early from work and found Jeff shirtless on the couch. This confrontation led Ray to kick Jeff out of the house. The next day, Ray calls Lisa and threatens to kill Jeff if he continues with Lisa. Ray emerged as a potential suspect due to his violent nature and apparent motive. However, the situation raised questions about the Kathy. Why did Ray kill Jeff's wife? She had not harmed him and was actually the victim in the scenario, just like Ray. Despite this, Jeff continued to blame Ray. He believed that Ray had gone to the house to carry out his threat against Jeff, but Jeff was not home at the time. It is also possible that upon arriving at Jeff's house, Ray was in danger from Jeff's wife and dogs, so Ray felt compelled to kill her and the dogs. However, this motive does not fit with the extreme violence the killers showed towards Kathy. Her injuries were extremely brutal, suggesting that this was not a random crime, but an act of deep hatred. The police then turned their attention to Lisa, the second lover. Despite her husband's threats, she remained in contact with Jeff. Cell phone records confirmed that they frequently called and texted each other, including at the time of the Kathy's murder. Lisa and her husband Ray were both investigated, but they had solid alibis and were eliminated as suspects. However, the police decided to track the geolocation data of the lovers' mobile devices to gain more details. The call between Lisa and Jeff took place just minutes after the murder. Jeff's cell phone was found near his home, and Jeff was not at work at the time, contrary to what he had previously said. Additionally, Jeff's dog was unharmed, which seems more than just a coincidence. Forensic experts conducted a thorough examination of the animals. They collected DNA samples from the dog's muzzle and paws. Notably, the stains found on Jeff's dog were identified as palm prints. Blood samples taken from the scene were confirmed to belong to the Kathy, indicating that the perpetrator was in the hall with the dog after the attack on Kathy, during which she was injured or possibly killed. Police suspected that the killer's DNA might be on the animal's muzzles and paws. However, the investigation disproved this theory, revealing that the blood was not human, but believed to be from dogs that may have been fighting each other. By analyzing all the new information, police were able to piece together a clearer picture of the events that occurred on that tragic day. Someone entered the house and discovered Kathy along with her 3 large dogs. The attacker hit the woman in the head with a heavy object. 2 dogs were present, also seriously injured and later died. And they did not attack the attacker. They endured the blows without defending themselves. The 3rd dog also did not confront the attacker. Instead, the 3rd dog focused on protecting the other 2 dogs. This behavior aroused suspicion. The police consulted dog handlers for insights. Experts suggested that the dog's lack of resistance indicated they were familiar with the attacker and viewed him as a friend. This familiarity explained why they did not confront him but instead appeared to bite each other. Police found bite marks on the dogs, leading them to conclude that only Jeff, the owner of the surviving dog, could have attacked Kathy. Additionally, geolocation data indicated that the Jeff was near the house, which supported their suspicions. However, the Supreme Court only had circumstantial evidence, meaning they still had a long way to go before bringing any charges. The police needed one crucial piece of information to strengthen their case. With no further clues, the police focused on investigating Jeff's personal life to understand what might have motivated Jeff to kill his wife. It turned out that the family had recently faced significant financial difficulties, which had affected Jeff for many years before these events. Jeff's boss caught him stealing a large sum of money, about $30,000. Jeff had not spent it all and agreed to return it. He also paid his boss $20,000 in restitution. The police then analyzed Jeff's activities. It turned out that his job brought in only a small income, just enough for his family's needs. He also spent money on his mistress. His wife's income was much higher, but he did not want to tell her about his problems. Jeff was characterized as someone without any remarkable business skills. He was neither particularly foolish nor exceptionally intelligent. His earnings were limited, making the compensation amount a serious financial burden for him. Despite living in an affluent neighborhood, he struggled to come up with the funds. Jeff sought ways to earn extra money or secure a loan, but all these efforts proved fruitless, and the total amount of compensation remained far beyond his reach. He later learned that he was the sole beneficiary of Kathy's life insurance policy, which was worth $29,000. Police believed that this amount of money could solve all of Jeff's financial problems. On the day of the incident, police collected the clothes he was wearing at the time. However, forensic experts conducted a quick test and found no blood or DNA from Kathy on his clothes. The suspect was wearing dark clothing, making it difficult to detect any blood stains. The experts meticulously studied every millimeter of the items using a microscope with 60,000 times magnification. Inside the jeans, they discovered several small red drops, which the forensic team identified as blood. This blood had seeped deep into the fabric fibers, suggesting that it was from high-velocity splashes. This evidence was consistent with the nature of the injuries sustained by the Kathy. DNA testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Kathy. The police were further surprised when they examined Jeff's other belongings. They found a gold earring embedded with a diamond in one of his trouser pockets, which he had claimed was stolen during an attack. This indicated that he likely staged the scene and hesitated to dispose of the item to avoid being caught at a pawn shop. To strengthen their case in court, the police needed to find the murder weapon. Despite their best efforts, the police were unable to find the weapon. It took the prosecutor's office 2 months to establish a clear connection between the killer and the victim. During this time, an employee of the company where Jeff worked discovered a hexagonal crowbar on the roof of the building. The tool was standard equipment on the company's tow trucks and was available to all employees. What made the crowbar suspicious was the significant amount of blood found on it. The employee promptly notified the police of the discovery. Jeff claimed that he had lost his crowbar and was unable to provide it to the police. This raised suspicions that the bloody crowbar belonged to him and may have been hidden as the murder weapon. The crowbar was sent to a laboratory, where experts compared it to the injuries found on Kathy's head. They concluded that the shape of the tool matched the impact marks. Additionally, the blood found on the crowbar was confirmed to be Kathy's through analysis. Jeff was arrested and charged with premeditated murder. Friends knew he had often complained about his troubled marriage. He claimed that Kathy couldn't manage household chores, which made him angry. However, he overlooked that she was the one supporting the family financially and covering their travel expenses, leaving her little time for housework. Jeff's car was always cluttered with garbage, yet he continued to blame Kathy. He frequently talked to friends about wanting to end their relationship, and several acquaintances reported that he was considering divorce. Kathy was unhappy in her marriage to Jeff due to his betrayals and chaotic lifestyle, which she knew about. She often vented her frustrations to friends but couldn't bring herself to leave him because she loved him deeply. Despite her unhappiness, she stayed with Jeff, trying to tolerate his behavior. For Jeff, murder seemed like a better option than going through a divorce. He was in dire financial straits after stealing $30,000 at work, which had severely impacted his finances. If he divorced Kathy, they would have to divide their assets, and he risked losing their home. He felt he had nothing left to lose, as a divorce would leave him with little since Kathy could claim most of their assets. Jeff figured that by committing murder, he could use the life insurance payout to pay off his debts, keeping part of the money to start a new life with his mistress. Jeff had promised to make a choice between his two girlfriends, Lisa and Joy, but the decision remained a secret. During the investigation, police uncovered more details about the crime. On the day it happened, Jeff left for work but had actually planned to kill his wife. He drove a tow truck to a gas station, pretending he needed to fill it up. His absence from work was noted, and during that time, he returned home to wait for his wife to return. He was familiar with her daily routine, so he did not have to wait long. In a shocking turn of events, Jeff brutally killed his wife's dogs with a crowbar. The dogs, confused and frightened, began to fight. To stop the chaos, Jeff hit each dog on the head and then took his pet, Netarunu, into a room and locked the door. After the incident, he removed his wife's diamond earrings, intending to make it look like a robbery. He discarded some of his clothes, taking off his shirt and shoes, but he kept the jeans he wore during the massacre, likely overlooking the bloodstains on them. This oversight allowed forensic experts to find tiny drops of blood on the jeans, linking him to the crime. His lover called him while he was near his home, which revealed his location on the phone. When he arrived at the station, he attempted to dispose of the crowbar used in the attack, but did so carelessly, simply throwing it onto the roof of a utility building and not washing it. He believed the tool would never be discovered. Jeff was convicted of premeditated murder due to financial difficulties he thought he could overcome by collecting life insurance from his wife's death. Prosecutors presented substantial evidence linking him to the crime scene, the murder weapon, and the victim. His fingerprints were found on the crowbar, along with Kathy's blood on his clothing. He had attempted to stage a robbery and failed to completely conceal the earrings that were believed to have been stolen. Several people testified about domestic problems. Kathy still hoped to reconcile with her husband, despite being devastated by his betrayal. She truly loved him and was undaunted by his financial difficulties. What she craved most was love and understanding. Unfortunately, Jeff did not want to rekindle their relationship. Instead, he planned a murder that he believed would net him $29,000. It is suspected that Joy, one of Jeff's lovers, knew of his intentions. Jeff promised her a future together, on the condition that she pay off the debt he would incur from his crimes. During the hearing, the defense attempted to portray Jeff as a model husband and a good person, but no witness could reliably substantiate this claim. Jeff had never been a hard worker and showed little interest in his work. He had no motivation to do anything else and did not have a positive reputation in his family life. He was not a good husband, as he had a history of infidelity that his late wife knew about. His lifestyle was well known to friends and family. But it was his wife who suffered the most. When Jeff's efforts to build a better image failed, his attorney changed tactics. He began looking for weaknesses in the prosecution's case. However, the prosecution's strategy was well rehearsed and backed by substantial evidence, leaving little room for debate. The defense argued that Jeff was not the only possible suspect in Kathy's murder, claiming that the police had focused too quickly on him without fully exploring other potential suspects. In fact, police and the prosecutor's office had interviewed dozens of people and considered multiple suspects. Each suspect was thoroughly questioned, allowing police to eliminate those who did not fit the evidence. The prosecution argued that the attacker had two motives. First, he hoped to solve his financial problems through a life insurance policy. Second, he wanted to get rid of his troubled wife so he could live with one of his mistresses. Additionally, he sought to avoid the risk of losing his assets or having to divide his assets in a divorce. The prosecution also argued that Jeff's mistress, Lisa, knew about his plans. She supported him and was waiting for the call to hear about the progress of the crime. Her indiscretion led her to call Jeff, which provided the police with a vital clue. Investigations were conducted to determine whether the mistresses were involved in planning or organizing the crime, but the results were negative. However, it is clear that they supported the Jeff, even though they should have reported his bad intentions to the police to prevent the murder. Ultimately, no evidence was found to prove the lovers' guilt or involvement, so they faced no consequences in court. In September 2006, Jeff Lamb was convicted of premeditated murder and sentenced to life without parole. As the verdict was read, Lisa wept uncontrollably in court. Kathy's family believes the court's ruling was fair. In Kathy's mother's opinion, Jeff should rot behind bars for the rest of his life. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Els van Doren. Els van Doren was a 38-year-old Belgian woman married to Jan de Wilde, a jeweler. Together, they had 2 children, Vincent and Carol. Although he worked in his family's jewelry store, Els van Doren's real passion had been skydiving. She initially took up the sport with her husband in 1994, but she quickly overcame his interest as her passion for skydiving grew. Els van Doren was an experienced skydiver with 2,300 jumps. Every weekend and holiday, she spent time skydiving. In 1998, she began formation jumping, and in 2001, she became a member of an all-female skydiving team called the Divas. The team competed at the World Skydiving Championships in 2003. However, Els van Doren had to leave the team in 2004 due to a herniated disc. After recovering, Els van Doren decided to skydive more for fun than for competition. She joined the Swartberg Parachute Club, where she met a fellow skydiver and close friend, Els Babs Klotmans, who was 26 years old and a school teacher. To avoid confusion within the club, Els van Doren suggested the nickname Babs for her young friend. Both women were acquainted with Marcel Summers, a member of the Swartberg Parachute Club. As Els van Doren, Babs, and Marcel became acquainted, Els van Doren found herself developing a strong relationship with Marcel, which eventually became a romantic relationship. Even though she was married, Els van Doren was able to keep her relationship with Marcel a secret because her family was used to her spending weekends at the skydiving club. She often visited Marcel's apartment on weekends without arousing her husband's suspicion. What Els van Doren didn't know was that she not only shared a name with Babs, they also shared a man, Marcel. Unbeknownst to both Els van Doren and Babs, Marcel had been secretly hooking up with both of them, devising a plan to manage his time with each of them. Friday was for Babs, while Saturday was for Els van Doren. This arrangement worked for Marcel for a while, but it didn't last long. On Friday evening, November 10, 2006, something unexpected happened. As planned, Babs went to Marcel's residence for a weekly meeting, but what she didn't know was that Els van Doren had also decided to surprise Marcel that night. Babs and Marcel had just finished dinner and were returning to their apartment when they met Els van Doren, who was waiting outside the door. That night, Babs did not sleep in Marcel's bed as expected. Instead, she slept in a sleeping bag on the living room floor, while Marcel and her friend, Els van Doren, were in the bedroom. While in the living room, Babs noticed Els van Doren's parachute and skydiving equipment nearby. Feeling hurt and betrayed by her friend's actions, Babs acted in a way that would ultimately have devastating consequences. On November 18, 2006, 12 members of the skydiving club, including Els van Doren, Babs, and Marcel, boarded a flight over Flanders. Their plan was to jump in a 4-person formation from 13,000 feet with Tom, another skydiver. During the jump, they would hold hands before leaving and opening their parachutes. Els van Doren and Tom jumped out of the plane as scheduled, but Babs seemed to have jumped a little late. As they free fell, Babs struggled to keep up with the group. At an altitude of 9,000 feet, Marcel, Els van Doren, and Tom decided to break formation to safely open their parachutes. That's when they realized something serious was going on. Els van Doren's parachute wouldn't open when she pulled the rope. Remaining calm, Els Van Doren recalled her emergency training and remembered a previous experience where she had successfully deployed her reserve parachute after the main parachute failed. Els Van Doren was plummeting towards the ground at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour, with only 20 seconds to perform an emergency maneuver to ensure a safe landing. Despite her best efforts, pulling the reserve parachute cord had no effect and the parachute could not open. In a state of panic, Els Van Doren continued to pull both the main parachute rope and the backup parachute rope. But nothing happened. Marcel, at an altitude of 800 meters, witnessed Els Van Doren's desperate struggle from afar. He was 300 meters above Els Van Doren, who was only 500 meters above the ground, and he knew something was wrong because her parachute had not opened. However, he was powerless to intervene and could only watch in horror. In a last-ditch effort, Els Van Doren tried to untangle her parachute in hopes of activating it, but it was too late. Her life ended. Meanwhile, in Upavbeek town, a woman was drying laundry in her garden when she heard a loud noise. She looked up and saw a person falling from the sky with a parachute, heading straight for her garden. This sight was not unusual as her house was located near a skydiving club and its landing strip. She suddenly noticed a piece of white cloth stuck to her bush. When she got closer, she saw a person lying in the bushes. She immediately called her husband, who was working in the garden, and they quickly called emergency services. Meanwhile, Marcel had landed safely and was desperately searching for Els Van Doren. He spotted an ambulance and followed it to the scene where Els Van Doren had landed. As he rushed towards her, he was restrained by the emergency team so they could work. Despite their efforts to resuscitate her, Els Van Doren died. Marcel emphasized that Els Van Doren's parachute was inoperable, pointing out that it was unusual for both the main and reserve parachutes to fail to open. He then contacted Els Van Doren's husband, Jan, to tell him the news. Jan rushed to his wife's side, while Tom and Babs returned to the skydiving club to break the tragic news to the other members. The news was heartbreaking. Babs was overcome with grief, falling to her knees and crying in pain. Els Van Doren's husband, Jan, went to the skydiving club to pick up her belongings. When he arrived, he met Babs, who offered to help him. However, Jan found it strange that Babs seemed to stand still with a strange grin on her face. She walked towards the dressing room with Jan following, but then suddenly locked the door, leaving Jan outside. After a long wait, Babs finally walked out carrying Els Van Doren's belongings. At the scene of the accident, police found Els Van Doren's parachute and helmet. The helmet had a camera that recorded her final jump. An autopsy was performed to see if Els Van Doren's death was caused by any internal cause. Results showed no signs of alcohol or drugs, leading investigators to conclude that her death was a murder or suicide. This conclusion was based on the severe fractures and internal bleeding caused by the fall. Els Van Doren's family suspected that she might have been murdered by someone in her own skydiving club, someone who knew how parachutes worked. As a result, club members were asked not to attend her funeral, but some of Els Van Doren's close friends chose to ignore this request. The family's suffering became even greater when police revealed that Els Van Doren had a secret affair with Marcel Summers that lasted more than 5 years. Jan was especially hurt when he learned that some of his club members knew about the affair, people he considered friends, but they all had kept quiet. What was even more painful was that Els Van Doren had told her clubmates that she had divorced her husband, which was not true. Els Van Doren had passed away just one day before her child Carol's 15th birthday. At the funeral, Carol gave a heartfelt speech, recalling how her family had prevented her mother from skydiving. They had longed for her to be with them, but Carol also admitted that her mother had been a unique person who wouldn't have been happy if she had given up what she loved. After the funeral, police began investigating the incident with Els Van Doren's reserve parachute. They sent a skydiving expert to check the parachute and look for abnormalities. Experts quickly discovered a critical problem: the pilot chute, a small auxiliary parachute that helped deploy the main or reserve parachute, was missing. Obviously, someone had deliberately removed it. Experts also discovered that the main parachute activation cord and one of the cords connecting to the emergency parachute had been cut. During the final review of body cam footage of Els van Doren's fatal skydiving accident, an unidentified piece of red fabric was seen in front of her. Investigators were unable to identify the object as part of Els van Doren's equipment. They therefore asked Oplab residents to thoroughly search their garden and surrounding area for the piece of red cloth and warned them to handle it carefully if found, as it could be potential evidence containing the DNA of the person responsible for sabotaging Els van Doren's parachute. Unfortunately, no one was able to find the piece of fabric. A week after Els van Doren's death, a surprising discovery was made when Babs found the pilot chute. According to Babs, she had discovered the parachute hanging from a tree while driving between Oplab and Genk on the way back from Marcel's apartment. Instead of contacting the police directly, she told Marcel about the discovery. Marcel then called the police, who arrived at the location and found Babs visibly shaken and emotional. The police were skeptical of Babs' story, as they found it unusual that she had stumbled upon the pilot chute. Babs insisted it had been just a coincidence, explaining that she had taken a different route home and had been delayed by a slow-moving tractor. She said this delay had caused her to look up and see the parachute hanging about 20 meters above her, which she interpreted as a sign from Els van Doren. The police were suspicious because they knew that only investigators knew that the pilot had been missing. At that time, 3 people were the main suspects in Els van Doren's suspected murder case: her husband Jan, her lover Marcel, and her friend Babs. Police searched Marcel's residence and eventually identified him as a suspect. They later also cleared Jan as a suspect. They then searched Babs' home and confiscated items such as her phone, laptop, and diary. In her diary, she had written down her feelings following the advice of her psychiatrist. Later, Els Klotmans, also known as Babs, was questioned by the police about her relationship with Marcel and what had happened to Els van Doren. During the interrogation, Babs insisted she had had nothing to do with Els van Doren's parachute. She blamed Marcel, claiming that he had often taken care of Els van Doren's equipment when she stayed at his place on the weekends, or blamed Jan, claiming that Els van Doren had often left her belongings at his house during the week. After the initial interrogation, Babs was released and went home. However, she did not appear for a second interview scheduled for December 20, 2006. It was later discovered that that morning she had tried to take her own life by drinking a combination of sleeping pills and antidepressants. Her mother had found her unresponsive and immediately took her to the hospital for emergency treatment. Before attempting suicide, Babs had written letters to loved ones expressing her struggle to cope with the loss of her close friend and the extreme stress of being a suspect in a murder case. After recovering, Babs had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital for 15 days for close observation. This had not been her first attempt at self-harm, as she had previously been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and depression. Marcel ended their relationship, believing her actions had been more a call for attention than an actual attempt to commit suicide. He thought she had taken the pill just before her mother had been due to return home, suggesting her main goal had been to divert attention from suspicion of involvement in the murder of Els van Doren. Marcel thought the police had been trying to track down Babs and arrest her based on her lies. While still under psychiatric care, Babs had been arrested on January 11, 2007, as a suspect in the murder of Els van Doren. When Babs appeared in court on January 19, 2007, authorities decided that she would be detained while the investigation was ongoing. Authorities asked Babs to take a polygraph test, but she refused and it was never taken. A thorough examination of Els Van Doren's parachute equipment had showed that someone had deliberately cut the parachute cord with scissors. The investigation revealed that the person responsible might have been right-handed. Babs spent 3 months in prison by March 2007, having to endure many interrogations. During questioning, she denied any wrongdoing but admitted sending anonymous letters to Els Van Doren. The letter affirmed that Els Van Doren's actions towards her family were wrong. Jan found the letter, but he interpreted it as a criticism of Els Van Doren's frequent absences due to parachuting. However, Babs' intention had been to warn Els Van Doren to end her relationship with Marcel. Babs also confessed to calling Marcel anonymously, especially when he had been with Els Van Doren. She had intended to threaten them. Investigators analyzed Babs' automatic activation device, AAD, and discovered that Babs had jumped with the rest of the team and deployed her parachute beforehand. This supposedly allowed Babs to witness events unfold from above and monitor where Els Van Doren's parachute would land. Babs could have landed and retrieved the parachute later. Babs' trial in the murder of Els Van Doren began on September 24, 2010. Babs had been quickly arrested. The prosecution felt confident that they had enough evidence to prove Babs had committed murder. They believed Babs had been motivated by jealousy because she had discovered her lover, Marcel Summers, had been having an affair with her best friend, Els Van Doren. Babs had previously told investigators that she knew Marcel preferred Els Van Doren to her. The prosecution argued that Babs had wanted to eliminate Els Van Doren as a rival. However, Babs' defense argued that the prosecution's case had been based on circumstantial evidence and unproven allegations. During the trial, Babs claimed that she had not seen a future with Marcel and only had an intimate relationship with him because of her low self-esteem. She even suggested that Els Van Doren's daughter, Carol, might have wanted to harm her mother for being away for the weekend. However, despite her efforts to manipulate the jury and shift blame, the judge's verdict prevailed. On October 20, 2010, Babs had been convicted of murdering her friend Els Van Doren and received a 30-year prison sentence. During the trial, Babs, steadfastly maintaining her innocence, had been closely monitored to prevent her from harming herself again. She later filed an appeal claiming that the police had interrogated her without a lawyer. In May 2011, her appeal was dismissed. In June 2022, after serving 12.5 years in prison, Babs was conditionally released after a third appeal and is now free. It is a pity that Els Van Doren had suffered a tragic fate and that her family had suffered immense pain when the truth had been revealed. Our sincerest condolences go out to the family and loved ones of Els Van Doren, who will be deeply missed. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Corey Richens. Eric Richens was born on May 13, 1982, and his life had a profound impact on those around him. Eric was a sports enthusiast who actively participated in basketball, baseball, and soccer. He had a particular passion for outdoor activities, especially hunting. His love for the outdoors was evident in the numerous trophies he collected from around the world. Eric was a fun-loving person who lived in Utah and enjoyed exploring the outdoors with his many motorized vehicles. He was also deeply committed to his faith as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With his family's support, Eric served a 2-year mission in Mexico City, where he became fluent in Spanish. After high school, Eric attended the University of Utah, graduating in 2009 with a degree in international studies and a minor in Spanish. It was during this time that he met Corey Richens, who worked at Home Depot. Eric, who often visited the store for work, developed a friendly relationship with Corey and was drawn to her charm and beauty. However, he was too nervous to approach her directly, so he asked a friend to help him get her contact information. While shopping at Home Depot, a friend of Eric's approached Corey and quietly asked for her phone number, saying that Eric wanted to get to know her better. Eric called Corey and they arranged to meet in person. Eric and Corey clicked immediately when they met. Their connection was real, and their first date marked the start of a wonderful romance. As they met each other's families, their relationship grew even stronger. Corey's family welcomed Eric with open arms, and Eric's family was just as impressed with Corey's kindness and how well she fit in with them. Eric's two older sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious of Corey, but they soon grew fond of and accepted Corey. In 2013, Eric and Corey tied the knot in a private ceremony, marking the beginning of their life together. They welcomed their first child, Carter, shortly after. The family continued to grow with the arrival of Ashton and then Weston, completing their happy family portrait. As a father, Eric found his footing quickly. His sons looked up to him and admired everything he did. Eric, in turn, took immense pride in his children's accomplishments, whether it was their academic achievements, sports victories, or creative pursuits. He was always present to support and celebrate their successes. Eric's entrepreneurial spirit led him to start a stonemasonry business, which flourished due to his exceptional craftsmanship and attention to detail. As a result, his business attracted many clients, providing financial security for Eric and his family. Corey was a successful real estate entrepreneur who contributed significantly to the family's income. Her expertise in the local market and business acumen made her a valuable partner in their growing family. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them at a profit. The Corey family appeared to have it all, with a lifestyle that seemed perfect on the surface. But beneath this facade, trouble was brewing. On March 4, 2020, the illusion of perfection shattered when Corey called 911 to report that her husband Eric was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived at the scene, they found that Eric had already passed away. Corey was devastated by the news and immediately called her mother, Lisa, who rushed to her side. Corey's brothers, DJ and Ronnie, also joined them, and together they struggled to come to terms with the loss. Earlier that night, Corey had been celebrating a business success with Eric, marking the purchase of a mansion for her real estate company. Before bed, she had made Eric a Moscow Mule, a drink made with ginger beer and vodka. Corey had gone to bed around 9 p.m., but instead of sleeping in her own bed, she had lain down with her 9-year-old son in his room because he was having nightmares. Corey returned to her bedroom around 3 a.m. and found Eric unresponsive. When she touched Eric, she felt that her husband was extremely cold. Realizing that something was wrong, Corey waited for paramedics to arrive and followed the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric. Corey claimed to have followed the instructions given to her. However, the paramedics were unsure what caused Eric's death, and the lack of information led them to consider the possibility of an aneurysm, given that Eric was a 39-year-old man with no known medical conditions. Further investigation revealed that Eric had complained of chest pains to Corey the night before he died, which initially strengthened the suspicion of an aneurysm. The autopsy results were unexpected and came as a surprise to all parties involved in the case. It was discovered that Eric died from a fatal dose of fentanyl, a powerful painkiller that can be fatal if overdosed. From the moment Eric died, his family began to suspect that his recreational drug use may have contributed to the fentanyl in his system. Corey explained that Eric used a nightly THC gummy as a way to unwind after a long day. However, the family had concerns about where Eric was getting these gummies. They suspected that Eric wasn't always buying them from trustworthy sources, and that he might have been purchasing them on the street instead. Eric's mother-in-law, Lisa, was particularly worried because Eric had a history of recreational drug use and may have also bought pain pills from street vendors without knowing they might contain fentanyl, unknowingly putting his life at risk. Eric's family strongly rejected the allegations, convinced that something else was responsible and encouraging investigators to consider other possibilities. Meanwhile, Corey struggled to rebuild her life. According to her brother Ronnie, she faced numerous challenges, including the void left by her husband's absence. To manage her grief and comfort her children, Curry found a creative outlet. She self-published a children's book, Are You With Me?, on Amazon, aiming to help kids deal with the loss of a loved one. The book tells the story of a boy missing his deceased father through illustrations and storytelling, allowing Curry to channel her emotions into a positive project. Curry portrayed Eric as a constant, loving presence in her book, watching over their son. Her mother, Lisa, appreciated the book, saying it helped her family cope with their emotions and find some comfort. However, as detectives looked into Eric's death, they suspected foul play was involved. In a shocking twist, Curry was arrested and charged with her husband's murder on May 8, 2023, just weeks after she had publicly shared her grief and promoted her book on local Utah news stations. The community was stunned by the news, struggling to understand the sudden turn of events. Curry, who initially gained public sympathy for her efforts to help children cope with loss, has become embroiled in a devastating scandal. According to court documents, Curry allegedly killed her husband Eric by administering a lethal dose of a poison. Curry intentionally spiked Eric's drink, a Moscow Mule, with a fatal amount of fentanyl on the night of his death. However, Curry's lawyer disputes this, stating that no fentanyl was found on the glassware at their home. Curry denies any involvement in Eric's death, insisting she had no reason to harm him. Curry's mother, Lisa, has expressed shock and confusion over the allegations, maintaining that they was happy and had no issues that would have led Curry to kill Eric. During the investigation, detectives discovered that Curry and Eric's relationship was not as perfect as it appeared. They had their differences, and Curry, a stay-at-home mother, craved independence. She was also annoyed by Eric's frequent hunting trips. Lisa claimed that Eric was having an affair, but his family denied this. They sought counseling, but Eric's family said it was because he loved his sons and wanted to make the marriage work. Eric considered divorce and took steps to protect his assets, secretly setting up a trust with his sister Katie. During the investigation, 6 life insurance policies on Eric were found, totaling $3 million. 2 months prior to his death, Curry had also forged Eric's signature on another policy valued at $100,000. It was also discovered that Curry had been embezzling money from Eric's personal accounts and misusing funds from his business over several years. Curry's financial situation was reportedly dire, despite claims that her house flipping business was thriving. In reality, the business was millions of dollars in debt. According to Eric's family representative, Curry urgently needed money. A premarital agreement, signed by Curry, revealed that she had waived her claim to Eric's business assets. However, if Eric were to die before her while they were still married, she would inherit the assets. Curry's lawyer denied the claims that her business was in debt. They explained that taking out lines of credit was a normal part of the house flipping business, and that the debt would be paid off when the houses were sold. The lawyer also clarified that the large amount of debt mentioned by the spokesperson was simply a result of normal business transactions. Curry's mother, Lisa, stated that Eric had been very supportive of Curry's business ventures, especially when it came to buying Heejin, where they were celebrating on the night of his death. Heejin was situated on a 10-acre estate in Heber Valley, close to popular ski resorts and Deer Creek Reservoir. Curry discovered a long-abandoned mansion that had been built in 2017. She joined forces with a group of investors to make a substantial offer on the property, using their collective resources to finance the purchase. Her plan was to transform the estate into a popular recreational destination. Although Eric initially seemed to support the purchase, his family later disputed this claim. They recalled that Eric had strongly opposed the idea of buying Heejin and had even argued with Curry about it. The family's spokesperson made a shocking allegation on the night of Eric's death. Curry had given him a drink spiked with fentanyl. Furthermore, They claimed that this was not the first time Corey had attempted to harm Eric. Eric's family claims Corey tried to harm him twice. First, during a 2019 trip to Greece, they say Corey gave Eric a drink that made him violently ill. Corey's brother Ronnie disputes this, suggesting Eric was taking antibiotics and shouldn't have had liquor. Ronnie says the bartender may have made a mistake, preparing a drink with liquor instead of the virgin drink Eric ordered. A second incident allegedly occurred on Valentine's Day 2022, 1 month before Eric's death. Corey brought Eric a sandwich that caused him to break out in hives and have trouble breathing. The court documents stated that 2 days after Eric's death, Corey punched his sister Amy in the neck and face when she tried to open a safe containing between $125,000 and $165,000 in cash. Corey claimed she was acting in self-defense when she tried to retrieve important documents from a safe. However, she was charged with assault a month after the incident and eventually pleaded no contest. In June 2023, Corey attended a bail hearing, which lasted 4 hours. During the hearing, prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence to support their claim that Corey had poisoned her husband. A cell phone expert testified about Google searches found on Corey's phone, including inquiries about retrieving deleted text messages from an iPhone, whether the FBI could access deleted messages, and the lethal dose of fentanyl. However, Corey's attorney argued that these searches were conducted after her husband's death, as Corey sought information to defend herself against accusations of murder. Prosecutors also contacted the lead detective involved in the case and questioned him about any potential sources that Corey could have used to obtain the drugs that were used to kill Eric. The detective shared information from an interview with Carmen Labor, a woman who claimed to work as a cleaner for Corey's business and home. In early 2022, Carmen told investigators about a conversation she had with Corey. Corey asked her to buy fentanyl for an investor who supposedly had a back injury. Carmen, who had a history of drug-related crimes and was on probation for distributing drugs at the time of the interview, agreed to Corey's request. She said she bought 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and later met with Corey to exchange them for cash. This exchange happened on February 11, 2022, just 3 days before Valentine's Day, when Corey allegedly tried to poison Eric with a sandwich. During the investigation, Carmen told the detective that Corey contacted her again, asking for stronger drugs. This time, Carmen revealed that Corey paid her for the pills with a check. A week after Eric's death, Corey gave Carmen a $1,300 check. However, Corey's lawyer disputed this, suggesting that the check could have been for cleaning services instead of payment for drugs. The detective agreed that this was a possible explanation. Corey's lawyer also questioned Carmen's credibility, pointing out that she was a convicted felon on probation for serious crimes. The lawyer argued that Carmen's history made her an unreliable witness. They claimed that Carmen might have lied about selling the drugs because the detective told her she would face a long prison sentence if she didn't cooperate with the investigation. Corey's lawyer asked if there was any physical evidence to prove that Carmen had bought the drugs. The detective replied that no such evidence existed. Specifically, no text messages were found where Corey directly asked Carmen for drugs. Additionally, no witnesses came forward to confirm that they saw Carmen and Corey exchanging drugs. Eric's sister pleaded with the judge at the bail hearing to keep Corey in custody, sharing the family's trauma and concerns about reliving the horrific circumstances of Eric's death if Corey was released on bail. The judge granted the request and denied Corey bail. However, Corey's family was upset by the decision and worried about her well-being in jail. They felt that her time in custody was affecting her physically and mentally. Corey experienced a health scare in jail after taking prescribed medication. She suffered a seizure and was rushed to the hospital. She claimed that jail officials had given her the wrong medication, leading to severe side effects. Thankfully, Corey recovered after receiving medical treatment. Jail officials found a handwritten letter in Corey's cell after she was hospitalized. The letter was never sent, but it was included in the court records and presented by prosecutors as evidence. They claimed it was written by Corey to her mother and showed her intentions and motivations. Prosecutors asked the court to limit Corey's contact with her mother and brothers in November 2023. The main reason was the letter found in Corey's cell, which prosecutors said was an attempt to influence witnesses. They alleged that in the letter, Corey gave her mother instructions on how her brother Ronnie should behave in court. Corey allegedly asked Ronnie to lie about Eric's behavior during a trip to Mexico. Specifically, Corey wanted Ronnie to falsely testify that Eric had admitted to buying pain pills in Mexico. Corey also told Ronnie to gather text messages from Eric that discussed his drug use. Corey stressed the importance of linking Eric's activities in Mexico to his alleged involvement with drugs. However, Corey claimed that the letter was not an attempt to tamper with a witness, but rather a work of fiction. A judge agreed, stating that the prosecution had failed to prove that Corey was attempting to interfere with the testimony. Currently, Corey and her family are trying to gain custody of their 3 sons, who are living with a relative. Despite being in jail, Corey regularly talks to her children through video calls. Her family attends their public events, but is not allowed private visits with they. Corey faces severe penalties if found guilty of murdering her husband Eric by lacing his drink with fentanyl. She could receive a prison sentence ranging from 25 years to life imprisonment. Moreover, she is dealing with multiple civil lawsuits related to Eric's estate, including disputes over custody of their children. The outcome of these custody battles has significant financial implications, as control of the children grants control over Eric's estate, fueling tensions between Corey's and Eric's families. Corey's trial is expected to begin sometime in 2025. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Samadi Fonseca Fernandez. Samadi Fonseca Fernandez was born in Costa Rica in February 1975. Not much is known about her early family life. Samadi grew up in Cuba, where she lived with her mother, Sonia Fonseca. She attended a local school. Samadi often used force or deception to get what she wanted. Samadi's striking looks and perfect figure make her a magnet, especially to men. Samadi's beauty and charm are overshadowed by her greed, vanity, and self-interest, which ultimately drives men away. Furthermore, she is extremely jealous and aggressive. Samadi, due to her youthful resemblance to Barbie, spent several years working at a Universal Company bookstore, dressing up as the iconic doll. After graduating from high school, Samadi started a long-term relationship with Osvaldo Fernando Ballery, a local television journalist 16 years her senior. Their relationship resulted in the birth of children, Christopher in 1996 and Christina a year later. However, constant arguments and jealousy eventually led Samadi to end the relationship in 2012. Shortly after, Osvaldo, 53, died suddenly. Osvaldo did not include Samadi in his will. Samadi took drastic action and seized Osvaldo's house, changing the locks to prevent relatives and heirs from entering. Samadi also took away Osvaldo's valuables. Osvaldo's family was furious and took Samadi to court for theft. Police intervened and forced Samadi to leave the house, but no criminal charges were filed against her. Samadi had other relationships, most notably with Miguel Angel Perez, the father of Samadi's third daughter, Maria. Although some reports claimed the couple were officially married, the relationship ended in divorce after a few years. It was strange that some of Samadi's lovers disappeared or died mysteriously under mysterious circumstances. But for a long time, for some reason, no one paid any attention to it. Another former lover, Diaco, met a tragic end after breaking up with Samadi. He was murdered during a robbery. The killers were never caught or brought to justice. As with the previous case, there was much speculation surrounding Samadi's possible involvement, but there was no solid evidence linking her to the crime. Samadi's most famous victim was Gerardo Cruz. Gerardo Cruz, a native of Costa Rica, was born in December 1992 in the city of San Jose. Gerardo Cruz lived with his mother, Ana Patricia, who soon married a man named Hermes Rodriguez, who raised Gerardo Cruz as his own son. Gerardo Cruz he attended a regular school, developed a passion for motorcycles, and met his future partner, Carol, at a young age. By the time he was 23, Gerardo had settled down with Carol and their 4-year-old daughter, Genesis, in the suburban home of his aunt and uncle in San Sebastian. To support his family, Gerardo Cruz took a job at a local bakery. It was around this time, in the summer of 2015, that Gerardo Cruz met Samadi, a 40-year-old woman who frequented the bakery. Despite her age, Samadi was attractive. Samadi began having affairs with men much younger than herself, because the attention of young lovers probably delighted Samadi. Gerardo Cruz was one such affair. Despite the significant age difference, Gerardo Cruz quickly fell in love with Samadi and began to meet secretly. Samadi came to the bakery every day to see Gerardo Cruz, and other employees took notice of Samadi's frequent visits. Samadi would bring his 19-year-old daughter, Christina, with him to the bakery. Initially, Gerardo Cruz was able to balance his family life and secretly date Samad without either woman finding out. He eventually let his guard down. He began bragging about his success with women and began sharing stories with friends and colleagues about Samadi, describing her as a great mistress who showered him with gifts. After just a few months together, in October 2015, Samadi discovered the truth about Gerardo Cruz having a pregnant wife and a child. Samadi was so angry that she started calling and texting Carol, Gerardo Cruz's wife, insulting her and threatening to kill Gerardo Cruz if he didn't belong to her. Gerardo Cruz tried to beg Carol's forgiveness. As for Samadi, he did not take her threat seriously, believing that she would quickly calm down and find a new boyfriend. Just days after breaking up with Samadi, Gerardo Cruz saw a man secretly filming a young girl's underwear with his phone. Gerardo Cruz filmed the man, stopped the girl, and advised her to report the incident to the police. He then chased the man, trying to capture his face on camera, until the man escaped in a taxi. Gerardo Cruz posted the video online and it quickly went viral. The man was identified as Luis Somano Delgado, a former member of the Ministry of Finance. The media picked up the story, and Gerardo Cruz became a national celebrity, outing Luis Somano Delgado in interviews. However, Luis Somano Delgado's lawyer accused Gerardo Cruz of wrongdoing, claiming that the video's distribution was illegal and preparing to file a lawsuit. Gerardo Cruz was surprised, wondering why he was being prosecuted instead of the man who committed the crime. Gerardo Cruz gave a radio interview confidently, without fear. The next day, he canceled his meeting with Oswald, citing an emergency after receiving a text message from Samadi, supposedly to discuss another interview with a young woman in a park. Unsuspecting, Gerardo Cruz met with her, but instead of journalists, 2 men stole his bag, beat him, and stabbed him multiple times. Gerardo Cruz called Oswald when he was unconscious, and Oswald called the police and paramedics. Gerardo Cruz was taken to the hospital, where doctors fought to save his life for 42 days. Gerardo Cruz underwent numerous operations, but unfortunately, they were unsuccessful in saving his life. He passed away in the intensive care unit on November 19. Gerardo Cruz's funeral was attended by a large number of people who wanted to express their condolences to his family. The community came together to express their hope that the police would quickly apprehend the perpetrators and bring them to justice. Initially, the investigation explored multiple theories. The first was that Cruz was a victim of a robbery gone wrong. This seemed plausible, given that he was attacked in a park, his bag was stolen, and he was stabbed with a knife. The first theory is that Gerardo Cruz was the victim of a botched robbery, as he was attacked in a park, his bag stolen, and stabbed. However, Gerardo Cruz recently released a video exposing a nationally known former official, which has fueled another theory, that the attack was a revenge killing. The media speculated that the former official, Sol Mano Delgado, may have hired a hitman to silence Gerardo Cruz, who had tarnished his reputation. The murder has sparked widespread debate in the press. Police later identified and tracked down the two men. The footage was made public and shown repeatedly on news programs, with viewers encouraged to watch the footage closely. Soon after, the identity of one suspect was confirmed when he voluntarily surrendered to the police, cooperating with the investigation in hopes of receiving a reduced sentence. The investigation quickly identified several accomplices and organizers of the crime, Samadi and her daughter Christina, thanks to information provided. Those involved, including taxi driver Ronald Archie, worker Cesar Chavez, a young miner, and Omar Costa, were arrested. The investigation revealed the roles and connections of all those involved in the crime through phone calls and text messages. Samadi was identified as the mastermind, who had carefully planned the murder for his daughter Christina. They enlisted the help of friends Ronald Archie and Cesar Chavez to find two assassins to kill Gerardo Cruz and stage a robbery in the park at night. Omar Costa later joined the plot, tasked with ensuring Gerardo Cruz was present at the park. Samadi chose October 7th as the date of the massacre. Samadi kept in constant contact with all the suspects, assigning roles and ensuring everyone followed the plan. Furthermore, Samadi asked the participants to take an item from Gerardo Cruz as proof that the crime had been completed. The evidence against Samadi was a series of text messages outlining the murder plan and the roles of each participant in detail. The motive behind the crime was a case of jealousy. She had carefully planned the crime and even involved her own daughter, who assisted her in every step of the process. Both Samadi and her daughter were taken into custody immediately, and the possibility of releasing them on bail was ruled out due to concerns that they would attempt to flee the country. Their accomplices were also detained, except for Omar Costa, who was responsible for surveillance and was the youngest participant in the crime. As a minor, Omar Costa was handed over to authorities that specialize in handling juvenile offenders. The investigation took about a year and a half to complete, and the trial did not begin until December 2017. It was discovered that Samadi had a history of criminal activity. The verdict was not announced until January 23, 2018. According to the court decision, Samadi was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Her daughter, as well as Ronald Archie and Cesar Chavez, received 25 years in prison each. Omar Costa, on the other hand, who had been following the victim, was acquitted. Gerardo Cruz's family has received $140,000 in moral damages. After the verdict was announced, relatives expressed gratitude to the court for giving Gerardo Cruz's killers a fair punishment. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sherry Miller. Sherry Miller was born on October 13, 1971, in Flint, Michigan, a once prosperous Midwestern auto industry city that had fallen on hard times. Her childhood was marked by hardship, growing up without a father figure in her life. Her mother led a loose lifestyle, often drinking heavily and changing partners frequently. Sherry's childhood was spent in a trailer next to her mother's men, who regularly abused her. According to Sherry, she was abused from the age of 3 or 4. By the age of 16, she had left to fend for herself. At 17, she married, became pregnant, and had a child. However, her marriage eventually ended. Sherry remarried and divorced again. Her second husband, Tribby, had a history of violence and was convicted of second-degree child abuse for assaulting his own child, resulting in multiple skull fractures. Although Tribby was tried for abusing her 6-year-old daughter, he was acquitted due to insufficient evidence. By the age of 26, Sherry was a single mother of 3 children, each from a different father. To support her family, she worked multiple jobs. Although she may not be a model, Sherry possessed a charm that drew people to her. In 1997, Sherry's life changed when she started working as an accountant at B&Auto Salvage, a company owned by 47-year-old Bruce Miller. It was there that she saw a man who could provide for her and her children. Bruce Miller was born on July 26, 1951. He spent many years working at General Motors. After leaving General Motors, Bruce Miller moved into the auto scrap business, where he would collect old cars and resell their parts. Bruce Miller was married 3 times and had a passion for racing and socializing. He was known for his generosity and openness to others. When Sherry joined his company as an employee, Bruce Miller initially wasn't interested in her romantically. However, Sherry eventually caught his attention, and they began an office romance despite their 20-year age difference. Their relationship progressed quickly. Bruce Miller was delighted with the attention Sherry was getting, and the couple quickly moved from dating to living together. Just 4 months later, on April 23, 1999, Bruce Miller and Sherry were married in Las Vegas. Sherry and her children moved in with Bruce Miller, finding the stability she craved. Bruce Miller's brother, Chuck Miller, said she thought Bruce Miller was the best thing that ever happened to her, finally having a normal life. However, Chuck Miller's wife was concerned about Sherry's overspending, maxing out credit cards and running out of available cash. Bruce Miller seemed unconcerned and largely ignored the issue. Sherry also worked, selling Mary Kay cosmetics to customers at home. Bruce Miller bought Sherry a computer to help monitor the account. In 1999, while using her home computer to research vacation destinations, Sherry stumbled upon adult chat rooms on the internet. Before social media and text messaging became popular, people often used online chat rooms to connect with others. Some of these chat rooms had adult content and allowed users to anonymously flirt and engage in virtual relationships. Bruce Miller knew that Sherry had been flirting with other people in these online chat rooms. However, he considered this behavior harmless and chose to trust her, not wanting to create tension in their marriage. Sherry quickly became comfortable in the virtual world, regularly logging into chat rooms and sharing her deepest desires with strangers under various pseudonyms. One of the men Sherry met online was Jerry Cassidy, who used the pseudonym Rena Dudes. Jerry was born on October 6, 1960, in Kansas City, Missouri, having been married, raised a son, and enjoyed deer hunting with his brothers. Jerry also had aspirations of becoming an FBI agent. Later, after becoming a police officer, Jerry exposed corruption in the police department by reporting falsified records to a colleague. However, this decision resulted in him being demoted and eventually forced to resign after 9 years of service. Despite doing the right thing, after losing his career, Jerry suffered from depression and began to abuse alcohol and drugs. During this period, his marriage fell apart. However, he managed to pick himself up and moved to Reno, Nevada, where he took a job as a security guard at Harrah's Casino. In his spare time, he frequented online chat rooms, where he eventually met Sherry. Jerry and Sherry began exchanging messages, which led to a face-to-face meeting in Reno in July 1999. Sherry attended a Mary Kay convention with a friend, using it as an opportunity to meet Jerry in person. Their online romance quickly turned into a physical relationship, giving Jerry hope that his life was about to improve. Sherry presented herself as a wealthy businesswoman who was married to a disabled man and was seeking a discreet sexual encounter. Jerry believed her story. Jerry was deeply infatuated with Sherry, telling his friend Carol Slaughter that she was extremely active in the bedroom. During the summer and fall, Sherry used her cosmetics business as a cover for secret trips to Reno, where she would meet Jerry. When they were apart, they exchanged sexually explicit messages and videos over the internet. They even went so far as to rename their online accounts, with Sherry calling herself Jerry's Fool and Jerry calling himself Sherry's Fool. Despite being an ex-cop, Jerry failed to see the warning signs, blinded by the affectionate emails. It seemed like Jerry was an easy target for Sherry. She quickly convinced Jerry that he needed to kill her husband. Those who knew Jerry noticed a significant change in him under her influence. In September, Sherry announced to Jerry that she was pregnant with his child. What Jerry did not know, however, was that Sherry had had a tubal ligation in 1995 and was unable to have children. Despite this, Sherry told Jerry that her husband, Bruce Miller, had discovered the pregnancy and beaten her, causing her to miscarry. Sherry then announced that she was pregnant again, this time with twins. Believing her lies, Jerry begged Sherry to leave her husband, take their supposed future children, and live with him. Sherry revealed that she could not leave her husband Bruce Miller because of his mafia ties, and she feared for her and Jerry's lives. During this time, Jerry got into trouble and was arrested at a casino for being drunk and disorderly. Their online communication stopped while Jerry was in custody. After his release, Jerry decided to protect Sherry from her husband by creating distance. Jerry returned to his family in Missouri, and the couple maintained their relationship through online chat rooms. Sherry continued to update Jerry, sharing photos of her pregnancy. Jerry was eager to believe it. However, on November 5, 1999, Jerry received an email purportedly from Bruce Miller stating that he knew about the pregnancy and vowed to prevent the child from being born. Concerned, Jerry tried to contact Sherry, who eventually sent him a text saying she needed to leave for a few days and would contact him later. The next day, Jerry received another text from Bruce Miller claiming that he had pressured Sherry into having an abortion. The text included pictures of Sherry, beaten and bruised. Jerry believes that Bruce Miller killed his unborn twins. Angry and grief-stricken, Jerry blames Bruce Miller for the deaths of his 3 children, including the twins, and the abuse of Sherry. On November 8, Jerry confided in Sherry that he could no longer continue the situation. Jerry was going to kill her husband, Bruce Miller. The couple then devised a plan to kill Bruce Miller, mapping out the route, parking, location, and best time to dispose of the body. Jerry drove from his home to Michigan to carry out the plan. That evening, as Bruce Miller was getting ready to leave work, Sherry called him and told him to pick up pizza on the way home, as planned. Jerry was waiting, and when Bruce Miller showed up, Jerry shot Bruce Miller with a 20-gauge shotgun. After the murder, Jerry returned home, and Sherry began the next part of her plan. She called Bruce Miller's brother, Chuck Miller, expressing concern about her husband being gone for so long and asked him to check on Bruce Miller at the junkyard. When Chuck Miller arrived, he found Bruce Miller lying dead in a pool of blood. Witnesses reported that Bruce Miller had been shot in the chest at close range with a shotgun. When his wife Sherry heard the news, she began screaming and crying. Police found no evidence of a suspect. They discovered that Bruce Miller often carried large amounts of cash and initially suspected his death was the result of a robbery because his wallet was missing. None of the leads came up and the case was soon closed. Meanwhile, according to Bruce Miller's sister, Judy Miller, Sherry's behavior was not that of a grieving wife. 2 days after Bruce Miller's death, Sherry was spotted dancing at a bar in Otisville, Michigan. Within 2 weeks, she had found a new partner, Jeff Foster, a local delivery boy, and her relationship with Jerry was over. However, Jerry had hope. After killing Bruce Miller, he and Sherry would be together. But Sherry began to distance herself from Jerry. A month after the murder, she brought her new boyfriend, Jeff Foster, into her home and broke things off with Jerry, leaving him heartbroken. At this point, Jerry probably realized he had unjustly taken a life and was haunted by guilt. Jerry began to investigate, and he discovered that Sherry had lied and fabricated the whole thing. 3 months later, on February 11, 2000, Jerry committed suicide in his apartment in Odessa, Missouri, with a .22 caliber rifle. His body was found sitting with an open Bible on his lap. Jerry had condemned himself, accepted his guilt, and executed himself. Jerry's mother revealed in an interview that while cleaning the apartment, she accidentally found a briefcase hidden under the bed. Outside the briefcase was an envelope, and inside, they found 3 suicide notes. The contents of the letters indicate that Jerry confessed to killing Bruce Miller because he believed that Bruce Miller had abused Sherry and killed Jerry's 3 unborn children. However, the letters also made it clear that Sherry had lied to Jerry about the acts that Sherry had accused Bruce Miller of. In the letter, Jerry said that he went there and killed Bruce Miller. At the time, he was stupid and didn't realize the consequences of his actions. Now the truth about his depression is finally coming to light. He couldn't share his secret with anyone, and it consumed him. The truth is that Sherry wanted her husband dead so she could get the money. She got what she wanted, but she will soon learn that her actions will have consequences. He now understood that Sherry's actions were all a ruse. She had no qualms about hurting people. To back up his claim, Jerry provided transcripts of their text conversations. In between their intimate exchanges, Sherry had coached Jerry on how to locate dumpsters, where to park without being detected, and other important details. On February 22, 2000, the Jerry family's attorneys contacted the Jesse County Sheriff's Department with this new information. The police waited for Sherry Miller at the airport as she returned from a trip to Reno with her boyfriend, Jeff Foster. Sherry was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Police described Sherry as a skilled manipulator who tricked her lover into killing her husband under false pretenses. Despite overwhelming evidence against her, Sherry maintained her innocence to her husband Bruce Miller's family. Her trial began on December 12, 2000, in Michigan, attracting national attention due to the internet-related crime. The prosecution presented thousands of text messages between Sherry and Jerry, exposing her deception. According to the prosecution, Sherry's motive for wanting her husband Bruce Miller dead was financial gain. However, the defense argued that Sherry only received a minimal amount of money after Bruce Miller died. The defense argued that Jerry, acting as a jilted lover, fabricated evidence against Sherry. Sherry maintained that the nature of their online communications was purely imaginative and not based on fact. Furthermore, she admitted to lying about her pregnancy, saying her intention was to help relieve Jerry's depression. She also admitted to falsely claiming abuse in order to convince Jerry to stop contacting her. Sherry adamantly denied writing the messages describing the crimes, instead claiming that Jerry, a former homicide detective, created them using his expertise. However, evidence of these messages was discovered on Sherry's computer. Sherry Miller was found guilty on December 22 and received a life sentence for the murder charge, as well as a 54 to 81-year sentence for conspiracy. In 2007, while incarcerated, Sherry was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health conditions. She began treatment, filed an appeal, and even got married for the 4th time. Michael DeNoia was drawn to Sherry's story after seeing it on the news. Michael contacted her and they began corresponding. In 2008, Michael visited Sherry in prison and proposed to her. Although reports claim they were married in April 2008, there is no concrete evidence to support this. Sherry's fortunes changed when she won an appeal in 2008, resulting in her release from prison in 2009. A federal judge overturned her conviction, ruling that Jerry's suicide letter was inadmissible as evidence because it couldn't be scrutinized through cross-examination. The judge ordered a new trial and set bail, allowing Sherry to be released. In 2012, Sherry was sent back to prison to resume serving her original sentence after the court re-evaluated the admissibility of Jerry's suicide letter. Having spent 3 years outside, Sherry continued to maintain her innocence. In 2016, Sherry sent a 4-page typewritten letter to a district judge, abruptly confessing to her role in Bruce Miller's death. The sudden admission stunned everyone, as it was thought that Sherry would never voluntarily take responsibility. In the letter Sherry wrote, "A pivotal moment came when she was forced to return to prison after 3 years of freedom. She had been living with her daughter and granddaughter, and she begged her daughter not to come with her when she was sent back to prison. However, her daughter refused to listen. As she walked through the prison doors, she turned around and saw her daughter crying, screaming, 'No, Mom, no, don't go.' It was then that she realized the devastation her crime had caused Bruce Miller and Bruce Miller's loved ones, including Jerry and his family." In a public interview in 2022 on a popular television channel, Sherry made some shocking confessions. She said that Bruce Miller had no connections to the mafia and had never abused her. Instead, she admitted that she used makeup to fake bruises and created fake ultrasound scans to trick Jerry. According to her, her motive was not financial gain. She claimed that she was afraid that Bruce Miller would discover her true nature. Sherry stated that sharing her story publicly helped her find some inner peace. However, she still struggles with guilt and shame, admitting it's difficult to look at herself in the mirror knowing what she did. After waiting for an opportunity to reveal the truth and find some sense of peace, Sherry remains imprisoned at the Huron Valley Women's Complex in Michigan. Sherry Miller has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Ellen Greenberg. Ellen Greenberg was born in June 1993 in New York to Santa and George Greenberg. She is an only child and grew up in a loving environment. During her high school years, she was very active in sports. Ellen was very sociable and also did well in her studies. After finishing high school, she attended Pennsylvania State University. However, when she started working in her field, Ellen realized that it was not her true passion. While working, Ellen also enrolled in a correspondence course at a teacher training academy. A few years later, she successfully completed her degree and moved to Philadelphia, where she became a junior high school teacher at a local school. Ellen's life was going well. She truly enjoyed working with her students. During this time, Ellen began a relationship with a young man named Samuel, also known as Sam Goldberg. He came from a wealthy and prominent family. Samuel's parents owned a large business and his uncle was known as one of the best lawyers in the state. Ellen and Samuel met at a party in 2009 through friends and quickly developed feelings for each other. Their relationship quickly developed and they later decided to live together. In 2011, Samuel proposed to Ellen with a diamond ring. The happy couple began planning their wedding, scheduled for the spring of that year. In January 2011, Ellen went to work at school as usual, but around noon, a strong wind and snowstorm caused classes to be canceled and both students and teachers were sent home. Ellen returned to her apartment, and then suddenly, Samuel also returned home. At 5 p.m., Samuel decided to go to the gym in their apartment complex. Samuel was gone for less than an hour, but when he returned, he found the apartment door locked from the inside and could not be entered. Samuel knocked loudly on the door and called Ellen's name. He then tried calling and texting Ellen, but there was no response. Samuel went down to the first floor to ask the security guard for help. Samuel explained the situation and asked the guard to open the door first. But the guard said that it was against his rules because he could not leave his post. Samuel then returned to his floor. He banged his shoulder on the door and on his first try, he broke the latch. It was very quiet inside. When he entered the kitchen, he saw a horrifying scene of Ellen lying on the floor, leaning against the cupboard door, her body stabbed multiple times and her clothes soaked in blood. Samuel quickly called an ambulance. When asked to check Ellen's pulse, Samuel hesitated and kept wondering if he really needed to do so. After a moment of silence, Samuel suddenly said that there was a knife protruding from Ellen's chest. Police arriving at the scene were surprised to find the door locked from the inside with a bolt, which Samuel had pushed open with his shoulder. There was no sign of forced entry or any intruder in the room. Nothing had been stolen from the apartment. During Ellen's autopsy, there were no signs of struggle or any attempt to defend herself, suggesting that the incident occurred suddenly and the victim had no time to react. Ellen's autopsy found about 20 stab wounds of varying depth, the fatal stab wound to her heart. Ellen struggled with anxiety and panic attacks. The situation became so severe that she sought the help of a psychologist. The initial assumption of the police, before the autopsy, was that Ellen had committed suicide. Ellen's therapist prescribed 2 anti-anxiety medications, which she took regularly. The psychologist confirmed that the medications would not affect Ellen's mental state or lead to thoughts of death. Despite her anxiety, Ellen never voiced such thoughts. Additionally, Ellen's friends and colleagues noticed that after she and Samuel began living together, her behavior began to change. Along with becoming anxious and restless, Ellen's parents also noticed similar strange behavior. 3 weeks before the tragedy, Ellen told her mother that she wanted to quit school, give up everything, and move back in with her parents. Her mother was surprised by this and assured Ellen that she could come home at any time. After the couple moved in together, Samuel began to act violently toward Ellen, leaving her fearful and reluctant to speak up. Ellen's psychologist noted that Ellen had difficulty expressing her feelings and experiences. It seemed as though she wanted to reveal something important, but fear held her back. The lack of care in the examination of the crime scene and body, as well as the subsequent investigation, was astonishing. Many important details, events, and evidence were overlooked or lost, making it impossible to reconstruct the full details of the incident. Initially, there were no defensive wounds on Ellen's hands. Many bruises were found on her body, and the degree of healing suggested that they had occurred several weeks ago. Samuel claimed that these injuries could have been caused by playing sports. However, Ellen's parents said that their daughter had not been to the gym or the playground for quite some time. Soon after the investigation began, the possibility of suicide was raised. Ellen had approximately 20 penetrating wounds of varying depths, and forensic analysis showed that 10 of these wounds were from the back. If Ellen had been attacked from behind and suffered serious injuries, even if they did not kill Ellen immediately, they would have likely limited her ability to move and resist. It is highly unlikely that someone would inflict such wounds on themselves and then stab themselves deep into the heart, leading medical experts to question the cause of death. The investigation still did not result in criminal charges. As there was no trace of a stranger in the apartment, nor any sign of self-defense. Although the victim's wife or partner is often the prime suspect in these cases, Samuel was never a suspect. No charges were ever brought against Samuel, and he was only questioned at the police station on the day of the incident, along with his uncle, a prominent lawyer. The events of that day were reconstructed entirely from Samuel's account, which was sometimes unclear. But he attributed his confusion to stress. Neighbors reported only that they heard knocking and screaming from Samuel when he could not get into the apartment and was trying to call Ellen. Samuel claimed that he asked a security guard for help, that the security guard accompanied him down the stairs, and that the security guard witnessed Samuel kicking down a door. However, the security guard denied this claim, claiming that he never left his post. Regardless, the police did not look into the matter further, considering it irrelevant. Only a surveillance camera leading to the gym was examined, which showed Samuel walking toward the gym and then returning. Samuel may have escaped by another route and then returned to the gym the same way. However, his alibi was not investigated, and witnesses who confirmed that Samuel was working out were not sought. The police officer who responded to the call noticed that Samuel was acting unusually, even though he was screaming and crying loudly. The expert suspected that he was faking his panic and anxiety. Importantly, before calling the police, Samuel contacted his parents and his uncle, a lawyer. His uncle arrived at the apartment before the police arrived to give a statement. Samuel went to the police station with his uncle. Furthermore, the next day, Samuel returned to the sealed apartment with his uncle to retrieve some personal belongings. Samuel took 2 laptops, a phone, and a tablet from Ellen. A few days later, the police decided to examine the devices and discovered that their search history included topics related to suicide. When the police arrived at the scene, they conducted only a preliminary examination and concluded that Ellen had committed suicide. Despite new information that later emerged, the police refused to change their verdict. The sequence of the injuries remains unclear, but it has been confirmed that the final wound was to the heart. The medical examiner found this odd and decided to investigate further. They sent a sample of Ellen's spine to a specialist who could assess the condition of the spinal cord. If the spinal cord was damaged, it would indicate that Ellen was paralyzed and could not have stabbed herself in the heart. Soon after, the police suddenly changed their minds and stopped the investigation, stating that, according to the report, there was no spinal cord injury. However, this conclusion was not added to the case file. It was also not noted that although there were many serious injuries on Ellen's body, there was very little blood, suggesting that someone might have wiped it away. No one actively looked for any signs of blood that had been wiped away. Additionally, the apartment's trash bins had not been checked, meaning any potential evidence inside was lost forever. Samuel's family, who were the first to arrive on the scene, notified Ellen's parents of their daughter's death. Ellen's family, who lived several hundred miles away, quickly arrived on the scene. Ellen's parents received no clear explanation of what happened that night involving Ellen. They were given only vague conclusions and were told that no criminal investigation would be initiated. Ellen's parents then chose to conduct an investigation, bringing in independent experts. Shortly thereafter, a private investigator contacted them and offered to assist them for free, as he wanted to shed light on this puzzling case. The detective examined the evidence and concluded that Ellen's body had been moved after her death. He also discovered smears on the floor that looked like drag marks. Additionally, when reviewing the case, the security guard recalled that Samuel, who had asked for help, was wearing a tracksuit and said he had just come from the gym, when in fact he was wearing boots. Despite this new evidence and witness testimony, Ellen's parents were once again denied a criminal case and no further investigation was conducted. Ellen's parents were not allowed access to important case files. 4 years later, a young police officer joined the unit as an assistant prosecutor. After learning about this unusual unsolved case while in college, he decided to look into the archives to uncover the truth. His attention was drawn to the wound at the back of the head, which might have been the first sign that Ellen had been attacked from behind when she was not expecting it. He was concerned to note that there was no spinal cord injury, but there was no official document to prove it. He assumed it was lost somewhere in the archives. He later formally requested a copy of the document from the forensic center, and it turned out that no one had ever come to such a conclusion and the body had not been examined for spinal cord injury. A fragment of the spine was surprisingly preserved and could be re-examined. An independent specialist assessed it and found that the spinal cord had sustained damage in multiple areas, indicating that Ellen could not have caused any additional injuries to herself. The findings were submitted to the police, but after reviewing them again, they decided not to pursue criminal charges. In 2018, the medical examiner concluded that Ellen had inflicted all 20 of her injuries on herself. The investigation reached a dead end. In their grief, The parents hired a new lawyer and together they gathered all the previously undocumented documents, evidence, facts, and witness statements. In 2019, they filed a new lawsuit against the medical examiner and the police. The following spring, the case was accepted and settled, but the trial never took place due to the global pandemic. Due to negligence by the police and medical examiners, important evidence was lost forever. Ellen's parents created a social media page to track the progress of the investigation, sharing official documents, new information, and updates. Ellen's family, friends, and colleagues are convinced that she could not have killed herself, especially not in such a brutal way. In the summer of 2022, the case was dismissed again, and Ellen's parents successfully appealed to the district attorney's office, where a new prosecutor took over. The investigation was restarted 11 years after the tragic events, but to this day it remains unsolved. During the first year after the tragedy, Samuel tried to keep in touch with Ellen's family. However, he did not participate in their investigation and refused to communicate with the police. He seemed to have no interest in the case, as Samuel accepted Ellen's death as a suicide. Samuel got married a year later. He and his wife moved to another state and cut ties with Ellen's family. They are now raising 2 children together. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Wilma Anderson. Wilma Anderson is the daughter of Linda and Marcus Anderson. Her parents' divorce later left difficulties in the family, making Wilma's living situation unstable. Although she could not live with both parents, her mother was always interested in her life. Wilma lived with her older sister Emily. Wilma is an active and ambitious girl. She likes to share her life on social networks, often posting photos on Facebook. Wilma loves being in front of the camera, showing her creativity and cheerful personality. Wilma met Tishko Ahmed Shabazz in Sweden when she was 15 years old. At that time, Tishko was 20 years old. Because the age of sexual consent in Sweden is 15, their relationship did not cause any legal problems. Although initially apprehensive about the 5-year age gap, Wilma's mother trusted her daughter's decision and eventually accepted Tishko. Tishko was originally from Iraq but moved to Sweden with his family when he was 8 years old. Tishko lived with his father and stepmother. During his school years, Tishko faced bullying, but as he grew older, he developed a strong determination to overcome any challenges he faced. In 2014, Tishko became a Swedish citizen, and after completing his studies in 2018, Tishko found a job in the care industry. Wilma and Tishko moved in together in Uddevalla, Sweden. Over time, Tishko became increasingly controlling, and Wilma's mother noticed a change in her daughter's behavior during the 2 years Wilma lived with Tishko. Wilma often confided in her sister Emily about her difficult relationship with Tishko. On November 14, 2019, Wilma told Emily over the phone that she was ending her relationship with Tishko. She was exhausted by Tishko's control over every aspect of her life, including what she wore, where she went, who she talked to, and how she applied her makeup. Feeling suffocated and desperate to end the relationship, she said she had to pack up and leave before Tishko got home from work. Emily tried to contact Wilma, but her calls went unanswered. The next day, November 15th, Wilma missed her dentist appointment. 2 days later, November 17th, Wilma's parents came to the apartment she shared with Tishko. After several knocks, Tishko opened the door, apparently intoxicated. Wilma's mother, Linda, asked Tishko about Wilma's whereabouts. He admitted that their relationship was over and that Wilma had left after taking her things. Tishko claimed that he did not know where Wilma was. Wilma's parents entered the apartment, hoping to find out more. Tishko recounted the argument that led to the breakup, with him and Wilma having a heated argument when he returned home from work around 5:30 p.m. Initially, her parents were not too concerned, as Tishko and Wilma's relationship was unstable. Emily, extremely concerned about Wilma's disappearance, created a Facebook post seeking information about Wilma. Normally, Wilma always contacted her family, so the lack of contact was very unusual. In the post, Emily described Wilma's appearance as 165 centimeters tall with black hair. After the posts were posted on social media, the police got involved. They interviewed Emily and other family members and began searching for anyone who may have come into contact with Wilma. However, neither Linda nor Emily had heard from her since her disappearance. With an extensive search effort underway, a combined task force of police, friends, and family set out to track Wilma using dogs and drone technology. When police approached Tishko for questioning, he claimed to have no knowledge of Wilma's disappearance or whereabouts, confirming that he had had no recent contact with her. By November 17th, 3 days into the search for Wilma, there were still no leads. Wilma was normally active on social media, but she had been strangely quiet during the time she was missing. As a result, some 5,000 people joined the search effort, and police returned to Tishko to gather more information. However, Tishko insisted that he knew nothing about Wilma's disappearance. Tishko claimed that Wilma had moved on to another man after they broke up, but there was no evidence to support this claim. Wilma's friends and family were left deeply concerned about her disappearance. Meanwhile, Wilma's family shared disturbing details with police about how Wilma's life had changed for the worse since living with Tishko. According to Wilma's family, Tishko controlled Wilma's life. Her sister, Emily, revealed that Wilma confessed that she was abused while living with Tishko. But despite this abuse, Wilma still had strong feelings for Tishko. Tishko took extreme measures to monitor Wilma's activities, including installing a GPS device on her phone. This allowed him to constantly track her location. A series of text messages between the two revealed Tishko's controlling behavior. The police thoroughly investigated Tishko's alibi. He claimed that after arriving home from work at 5 p.m., he did not leave his apartment. To verify Tishko's story, police tracked the GPS on Tishko's phone. Police found CCTV footage showing Tishko at a supermarket around 2:30 p.m. on the day Wilma went missing. He then returned home from work at 5 p.m. Neighbors reported a loud argument between Tishko and Wilma, and arguments were common between them. A loud argument between the Wilma and Tishko occurred around 6 p.m. This prompted a concerned neighbor to check on them. As the neighbor approached the apartment door, they noticed an eerie silence. The sudden quiet was unsettling, but the neighbor, unsure of what to do next, returned to their own apartment. The police thoroughly investigated Tishko's activities, including his workplace and company vehicle. They requested forensic testing on the vehicle and reviewed the GPS data, which revealed his movements from Thursday the 14th to Monday the 18th. According to the GPS log, Tishko had visited clients and returned to his residence during his regular work hours on those days. On the evening of the argument, around 6:30 p.m., Tishko left his apartment. Witnesses saw him walking alone along the freeway, wearing all black clothing. A motorcyclist described Tishko as appearing lost in thought. Police stopped Tishko and escorted him home. When questioned, Tishko said he initially intended to catch a train but decided to walk home instead. However, the police did not file an official report on the incident. Later, on November 19, 2019, Tishko was arrested. He had obvious scratches on his wrists. A search of Tishko's apartment revealed clues such as Wilma's belongings, including a handbag, jacket, shoes, and eyeglasses. Wilma's mother, Linda, insisted that her daughter would always carry her bag, adding to the mystery. Forensic experts tested the scene with Blue Star, a sophisticated version of luminol, and found a trail of blood. Every room had blood on the walls and floors, suggesting a violent struggle had taken place throughout the apartment. The bed had a gruesome stain, a torso-shaped mark that was visible under the glow of blue star. The discovery of muscle tissue on a knife and on the living room wall added to the horrific scene. The large amount of blood found made it seem unlikely that anyone could have survived. The search continued outside the apartment, where trash bags were found containing Tishko's bedding with incriminating blood stains. Confronted at the police station, Tishko was shown the evidence against him. However, he strongly denied any involvement, claiming he would have known if someone had been seriously hurt in his home. At the same time, more and more people were joining the search for Wilma every day. The apartment where Wilma was last seen has now been turned into a crime scene, but all attempts to contact Wilma have been unsuccessful. 2 weeks after Wilma went missing, on November 28, police brought in sniffer dogs to assist in the search. These trained dogs are experts at detecting the scent of dead bodies. When they entered the bedroom, one of the dogs quickly indicated that it had found something, a sign that there was likely a dead person or human remains in the area. A strong, unpleasant stench filled the apartment, making the already gloomy atmosphere even more oppressive. The police had searched the place before, but this time they carefully searched the bedroom, paying special attention to the area the dogs had marked. They focused on a wardrobe, which at first glance looked like another piece of furniture. However, inside this ordinary-looking wardrobe was a small travel suitcase. When they opened the suitcase, the police found a large object wrapped in aluminum kitchen foil. When they carefully removed the foil, they witnessed a horrifying sight with blood stains on the foil. Wilma's head had been severed, wrapped, and secured with tape. The travel case, which held the gruesome evidence of Wilma's fate, was sent to the forensic labs in Gothenburg for further analysis. A detailed examination uncovered Tishko's fingerprints. The investigation revealed the shocking conclusion of the case. Although the exact cause of Wilma's death could not be confirmed, investigators found severe injuries to her head and eyes consistent with blunt force trauma. The violent nature of the decapitation made it difficult to assess the full extent of Wilma's head injuries. Wilma's family was devastated by the news of Wilma's tragic fate. Wilma's mother Linda joined the efforts to find the rest of Wilma's body. The family was forced to confront the horrific details of the crime, which were slowly emerging from the evidence found in Tishko's apartment. A harrowing picture began to emerge. Wilma's final moments may have taken place in the living room, where she was brutally attacked, suffering a fatal blow to the head. Swedish police recorded Tishko's denial of involvement in Wilma's murder, in which he maintained his innocence. His statement revealed a distorted perception of love, as he said, "You forget that this is a girl he loved and that he lived his whole life for. If he killed her, he wouldn't be able to keep her head." Despite this, law enforcement gathered enough evidence to charge Tishko, and his trial was scheduled for May 2020. Throughout the trial, Wilma's body remained missing. Tishko showed no signs of remorse or emotion. In court, his defense team tried to argue that he was not guilty by reason of insanity, pointing to his irrational beliefs and claims about Wilma as evidence. However, this defense was unsuccessful. On July 27, 2020, the court delivered its verdict. Tishko, 23, was found guilty of murdering 17-year-old Wilma Anderson and was initially sentenced to life in prison. However, the appeals court later reduced his sentence to 18 years. The sentence was reduced in part due to a lack of concrete evidence surrounding the circumstances of Wilma's death, including the fact that her body was never found. Wilma's funeral was finally held in late 2020, bringing closure to the tragic events, but undoubtedly causing immense grief for her family. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Grace Mill Lane. Grace Emmy Rose Mill Lane was born on December 2, 1996 in Wickford, Essex, to her parents Gillian and David Mill Lane. She was the youngest of her 3 siblings. She was known as a lovely, outgoing, cheerful daughter who thought about her family and loved creativity and art. Because her family was so close to her, Grace maintained daily contact with her siblings and parents, even when she rented a house near her school, Lincoln University, where she studied advertising and marketing. In 2018, Grace Millane, 21, graduated with a bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing. Like most young people at that age, Grace decided that she would take a year off before settling into her career. She decided to travel to South America before going to New Zealand. She embarked on a 10-month solo adventure in October 2018. She initially visited Peru before making her way to South America. On November 19th, Grace arrived in New Zealand and checked into the base backpackers hostel in Auckland, ready for a 2-week holiday traveling around the Upper North Island. It was in New Zealand that Grace met her Tinder match, a 28-year-old man named Jesse Kempson, on December 1st. Jesse Kempson was born on December 28, 1991, in Lower Hutt, New Zealand, but he grew up in Wellington. His parents separated when he was young, and for a time, he was raised by his grandparents. He moved to Australia with his mother as a teenager, but in 2016 he returned to New Zealand and lived in a hostel in Wellington. Grace didn't know that Jesse had a darker side, a more cruel soul, in him. Jesse was known to be a very charming guy, and he used that to manipulate people. On one occasion, Jesse lied to his former landlord that he was a professional softball player, newly signed by the New Zealand national softball team, the Black Sox, and claimed that his contract money would come so he could pay the rent. That went on for 2 months. And the homeowner only learned the truth when Black Sox management announced that no one knew who Jesse was. Unfortunately, the homeowner later discovered that he had fled elsewhere without his knowledge. He also sometimes claimed to have a bachelor's degree in international law, came from a millionaire family looking to buy a top restaurant in Auckland, had connections to the New Zealand Immigration Service, and many other lies that he mentioned to everyone. In reality, Jesse was nothing more than a dreamer who could only impress people with wild lies. His former roommates in a Green Lane boarding house found Jesse disturbing and untrustworthy before he moved into the City Life apartment. On another occasion, a woman he lived with claimed he stole money from her house and ran away again, costing the City Life homeowner thousands of dollars. Jesse was an enigma to many. He lied throughout his life, and it seemed to work. He also seemed to get away with it time and time again. Back at the dorm where Grace was staying, she was chatting happily with Jesse. Grace had no doubts and was captivated by Jesse. Grace even sent a text message to her best friend Anna back home, telling Anna that she agreed to Jesse's confession. Since it was Saturday and her 22nd birthday was the next day, Grace didn't want to be alone and decided to go out. She decided it was time to meet Jesse. Jesse lived just 5 minutes away from where Grace lived, and Grace thought they needed to get to know each other a little better. On that special day, Grace got ready for her big evening and felt nothing but excitement and optimism. Grace left the base backpackers hostel in Auckland at 6 p.m. On the evening of December 1st, she wore a black dress and carried a small handbag. Little did she know that her night would take a devastating turn. Initially, the evening seemed to have gone well as she and Jesse visited the Blue Stone Room and left together around 9:30. However, when her 22nd birthday arrived the next day, Grace did not respond to birthday wishes from family and friends. This unusual silence caused anxiety and panic, especially among her family members. It was unusual for Grace not to keep in touch as she regularly updated her family about her trip and shared photos of her adventures. Therefore, Grace's parents contacted Auckland police and reported her missing on December 5th. Thanks to an extensive network of CCTV cameras across the city and reports from witnesses, police were able to quickly track Grace's movements on the night she disappeared. They also identified the man with her, Jesse Kempson, who became a key figure in the investigation. Jesse stopped at the Blue Stone Room, a local bar next to the City Life Hotel where he was staying, on the night he was supposed to meet Grace. About half an hour before the scheduled meeting, Jesse was seen drinking 4 bottles of beer, sitting alone in a bar. Meanwhile, Grace arrived early at the Sky Tower, the location they had agreed upon. This location was chosen because of its high visibility and beauty. Sky Tower is a famous landmark in New Zealand's largest city and can be easily recognized from afar. When Jesse arrived, the two quickly recognized each other and greeted each other warmly, with Jesse hugging her as she smiled and approached him. They then went to a restaurant and burger bar on the first floor of the adjacent Sky City complex. Their entire time together at Sky City was captured on camera, showing Jesse and Grace chatting while riding the escalator to Andy's Burger and Bar. When they arrived, they ordered cocktails from the bartender and sat at the table to talk. They left the bar after an hour and a half and walked to a nearby Mexican restaurant. Over a period of time, they consumed a large number of drinks, including 2 pitchers of margaritas and a pitcher of sangria. They then moved to the Blue Stone Room, where Jesse had previously been drinking alone. At 8:40 p.m., Jesse gently kissed Grace. This marked the beginning of several shared kisses that took place over the next hour. During this time, there were brief interruptions, once when Jesse walked away for a moment. And another time when Grace checked her phone, as well as when she sent her last text to her friend, Anna. Jesse eventually walked away, took out his phone, and left a message on Grace's Facebook profile, saying she looked beautiful and radiant. Unbeknownst to him, this seemingly harmless act eventually turned the detectives towards him. Around 9:30 p.m., Jesse and Grace left the venue, walked toward the City Life Hotel lobby, and took the elevator to room 308. What happened while Jesse and Grace were in the hotel room is unknown. What is confirmed is that Jesse killed her. At 1:30 a.m., Grace's body was brought into room 308. Following the discovery, police determined that Grace had never left the building and that Jesse had chosen not to seek emergency assistance following the death of Grace. After Grace's death, Jesse conducted numerous internet searches using his cell phone. His online searches included searching for the terms hottest fire and Waitakere Range. Waitakere was the area where Jesse later tried to bury Grace's body in a shallow grave. Jesse also browsed a website to find video content. In addition to these actions, Jesse also took 7 intimate and explicit photos of Grace's body after her death. These photos included close-ups and posed shots that he arranged to take. The next morning, while Grace's body was still in room 308, Jesse sent a message to a woman he met on Tinder to go on a date the same day. Jesse's actions continued and he was recorded on CCTV as he went to an entertainment store to buy a suitcase and a supermarket to buy cleaning supplies. After these purchases, he rented a red Toyota hatchback and went out in the afternoon to meet the woman from Tinder at a bar in Ponsonby called RRY, while Grace's body remained in his room. On December 2nd, Jesse returned to his hotel room around 5:45 p.m. and rented a carpet cleaning machine, saying he needed it to remove a red wine stain. Then, he parked the rental car outside the hotel, took the luggage cart from the front desk, and went upstairs. He returned with the cart, which then contained 2 large suitcases. He loaded his luggage into the car and moved it to a nearby parking lot. Unbeknownst to the others, one of the suitcases, a silver one, contained Grace's body, while the other suitcase was used as bait to avoid arousing suspicion. Throughout the day, security cameras recorded Jesse changing clothes multiple times. Early the next morning, around 6:15 a.m., Jesse was seen leaving the hotel and driving away, stopping briefly to buy a shovel at a store outside of town. On December 7, 2018, Grace's father, David Mill Lane, traveled to New Zealand to make a sincere appeal for information about his daughter's disappearance. A detective identified Jesse as a person of interest after Grace's mother noticed he had sent her a Facebook message at 9:29 p.m. on December 1st, just 11 minutes before Jesse and Grace left Blue Stone Room and went to his room. During Detective Diana Levinson's initial questioning, Jesse claimed that he met Grace but broke up with her at 10 p.m. on Saturday, and that was the last time he saw her. However, detectives obtained CCTV footage from the hotel, which proved Jesse was lying. At the second interview, Jesse was forced to admit to killing Grace, but he claimed it was a sexual accident after she asked him to strangle her in an attempt to make the experience more pleasurable. After the interview, he was arrested and led police to the location of Grace's body. The body was discovered about 4 p.m. on December 9th in Waitakere Ranges Regional Park, off Scenic Drive. An autopsy was conducted on December 10th. An autopsy showed Grace had been strangled and bruises on her body showed she had been restrained. Jesse's trial began in Auckland on November 4, 2019. Jesse claimed Grace's death was an accident caused by rough sex gone wrong, but the jury rejected this explanation and found him guilty. Jesse Kempson had been convicted of murder on November 22, 2019, at the age of 28. During his trial, it had become clear that he had a history of making women feel extremely uncomfortable, especially those he had met or communicated with on Tinder. 8 months before meeting his victim, Jesse had dated another British tourist on Tinder and had taken her back to his motel room in Oakland. When she had refused to have sex with him, he had assaulted her while she had been crying and frozen in bed with fear. The female tourist had kept the incident a secret until she had recognized Jesse in the media after he had been charged with murder. Jesse's online interactions with another woman had also raised concerns. He had shared explicit messages where he had detailed his sexual preferences and had explained why he had them. It was believed that his desire to control and dominate might have contributed to Grace's death. In a separate trial, Jesse had been convicted of assaulting his ex-girlfriend. He had assaulted her, had threatened her with a butcher knife, and had forced her to perform humiliating acts. Jesse had claimed that he had been sent by the CIA to kill her, displaying a disturbing pattern of behavior. Throughout the trial, Jesse had shown no remorse for his actions and had refused to accept responsibility. On February 21, 2020, Jesse had received a sentence of life in prison with a minimum of 17 years without parole. The tragic events surrounding Grace's story had highlighted the need for increased safety measures for travelers, especially young women hoping to explore the world. Hey detectives, welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rowena Irani. Rowena Irani was born on February 18, 1994, in Karachi, Pakistan, to parents Turan and Bam Irani. In 2004, when Rowena was 10 years old, her family moved to Wichita, Kansas, in search of better opportunities. The goal was to provide Rowena and her older brother, Rashid, with a brighter future in America. However, the 9.11 tragedy 3 years earlier had created a climate of prejudice that affected the Irani family, making it difficult for Rowena and Rashid to form friendships due to the hostility they faced. Despite the initial difficulties, Rowena and Rashid eventually settled in and expanded their social circle. Rowena joined her high school's ROTC program and drill team, which helped her develop skills, even though she didn't plan to pursue a military career. After a tough start, Rowena blossomed into a strong-willed, friendly, and caring individual. Rowena graduated from Wichita Heights High School in 2012 and enrolled at Wichita State University, choosing to live at home while pursuing a degree in psychology. Her goal was to earn a master's degree and become a counselor for teenagers. Rowena's mother was extremely proud of her dedication to her studies. From the start, the Irani family's sacrifices clearly had a positive impact on their children. Rowena, in particular, wanted to help others reach their full potential. She started working at the Wichita Children's Home, a place for neglected, abused, and emotionally distressed youth. Rowena formed strong bonds with the children, showing her remarkable ability to understand and support them. Rowena made the children feel welcome and cherished, creating a sense of security. Every morning, Rowena would gently wake the children, and every evening, she would bid them farewell. The children looked forward to sharing their daily experiences with her, no matter how small. Rowena also helped the children set goals and find ways to achieve them, showing her dedication to their well-being. Rowena demonstrated a strong commitment to helping troubled youth. And her outstanding academic record as a psychology major indicated she had found her purpose in supporting others. She seemed to be living the American dream her parents had sought. However, problems in her personal life soon arose, ultimately leading to a tragic outcome. In May 2016, Rowena reconnected with Dane Owens, a family friend, at her brother's wedding. Dane came from a wealthy Kansas family and had joined the U.S. Army after high school. His military service ended abruptly due to a severe traumatic brain injury from an explosion. After a medical discharge, Dane attended Kansas State University, where he met Rowena. They soon developed strong feelings for each other. But problems soon arose due to Dane's behavior. He was possessive, controlling, and had a quick temper. People close to Rowena said that Dane became obsessed with the idea of marrying her and starting a family right away, even though she wasn't sure about it. At 22, Rowena wanted to finish college before making such a big decision. Dane's insistence on marriage and his intense behavior scared Rowena, her feel like the relationship was moving too fast. When she asked for space, Dane wrote a disturbing letter, begging her not to leave him and hinting that he might harm himself if she did. This led Rowena to end the relationship. At first, it seemed like Dane accepted Rowena's decision when she reiterated that she wasn't ready for marriage or starting a family. However, just 1 week after giving her space, Dane started pressuring her again about getting engaged, planning a wedding, and having kids. His actions made it clear that he saw Rowena as a prize to be won. Instead of supporting her education and career, Dane seemed determined to limit Rowena to a domestic role. Rowena is worried about her relationship with Dane because she feels he is too controlling of her, and this makes her wonder if they are really a good couple. By September 2016, Dane's increasing aggression had become alarming, prompting Rowena to confide in her brother, Rashid, a police officer. She shared several disturbing incidents, including Dane's claims of committing brutal killings during his military service. He even bragged about murdering women and children while deployed in Afghanistan. Rowena found these revelations deeply disturbing. Furthermore, Dane had expressed his intention to kill an ex-girlfriend who had ended their relationship. He confessed that following the breakup, he became consumed by a desire for revenge and struggled with emotional instability, to the point where he even contemplated committing murder. Rashid agreed with Rowena's assessment that Dane posed a genuine threat and he seemed capable of violent acts against her. On September 23, Rowena ended her relationship with Dane. She blocked his phone number and social media profiles to distance herself. However, Dane refused to accept the breakup and started planning his revenge. Despite recovering from shoulder surgery and being unable to handle a firearm properly, Dane bought a .45 caliber handgun. On October 3, over a week after the breakup, he secretly visited Rowena's residence while her family was away. Surveillance cameras caught him parking his vehicle away from the house and approaching stealthily, hiding the firearm in a sling due to his injured arm. Dane entered the house through an unlocked door and waited for Rowena. When Rowena appeared, he aimed his gun and fatally shot her in the head. This was a deliberate and carefully planned violent act committed by someone who was excessively controlling. After shooting Rowena, Dane quickly left the house through the back door and drove away to avoid being caught. During his escape, he stopped to get rid of important evidence, including the handgun magazine and Rowena's phone, in various ponds in Wichita. Meanwhile, Rowena was left alone in her home, severely injured and bleeding heavily, for several hours. At around 4 p.m., her mother, Tarun, returned home after being dropped off from work. Tarun was worried because Rowena usually picked her up. But she couldn't reach Rowena by phone. She got a ride from a coworker and went home, where she found Rowena lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by a large amount of blood, with severe head injuries. Tarun immediately called for emergency services, but it was too late to save Rowena. Rowena's condition was extremely serious due to a gunshot wound and significant blood loss. She fought for her life at Wesley Medical Center for nearly 24 hours, while her family stayed by her side, hoping for a miracle. Tragically, she passed away on October 4th at just 22 years old. Her promising life was tragically ended by a violent act. Despite their intense grief, Rowena's family was determined to find justice for her murder. Rushd quickly focused the investigation on Dane, Rowena's ex-boyfriend, who had been causing her a great deal of fear before her death. Dane was soon found and brought in for questioning. After being arrested and taken to the police station, he admitted to holding a grudge against Rowena for breaking up with him. When questioned further, Dane tried to claim that Rowena's death was an accident, but the evidence proved this was not true. Dane told investigators that he had shown up at Rowena's home unannounced, carrying a loaded .45 caliber pistol and hoping to talk about getting back together. However, Dane claimed that the firearm was hidden in his arm sling and he never intended to threaten or harm Rowena when he entered the house looking for her. He said when Rowena suddenly appeared, he was startled, causing a moment of panic due to post-traumatic stress disorder from time in the military. Dean alleged that he accidentally fired a shot in her direction. He explained to detectives that he was left shocked and horrified after the bullet accidentally struck Rowena in the head, resulting in her immediate collapse to the ground. Panicked, he fled the scene and later got rid of the evidence. Despite his claim that the shooting was an accident caused by a reflex, detectives did not believe him. The security footage and his admission of sneaking up on Rowena with a loaded gun, his attempt to dispose of evidence, and the execution-style gunshot wound to Rowena's head all suggested a planned and deliberate murder. In November 2018, Dane Owens stood trial for Rowena's murder after years of delays, with the case being heard by a jury. The prosecution presented case with substantial evidence, leaving no doubt about Dane's guilt. They portrayed Dane as a possessive and controlling individual who turned violent when rejected. Dane's delusional fantasies led him to end Rowena's life. After only 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Dane guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated burglary, resulting in a life sentence in Kansas. Dane was punished for taking Rowena's life due to his wounded pride. He will not be eligible for parole for 25 years, and his chances of release are low due to the brutality of his actions. He is currently serving his sentence at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility in Hutchinson, Kansas. Rowena's life was ended by someone she once loved. It's heartbreaking to think of the terrible actions of Dane, who took Rowena's life, depriving her of a bright future at such a young age. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Michelle Avila. Michelle Yvette Missy Avila was born on February 8, 1968, in Arleta, Los Angeles. She grew up in a family with a mother and 3 brothers. Michelle attended San Fernando High School with 2 of her close friends, Karen Severson and Laura Doyle. However, their friendship began to deteriorate when they entered high school. Thanks to her beauty and popularity, Michelle attracted a lot of attention from her peers, especially boys. Michelle's prominence made Karen and Laura increasingly jealous. Afterwards, a false rumor spread that Michelle had been involved with several guys who were already in relationships. This malicious gossip incited violence against Michelle outside of school. The assault was so serious that when she returned home, her parents immediately charged the ringleader of the assault, Sonia Bon, and took her to court. Michelle was scheduled to testify against Sonia in court on October 8, 1985, but unfortunately, she never got the chance. This was due to a series of events that took place in early September. A rumor that had been circulating for a year, accusing Michelle of having had an affair with her friend's boyfriend, resurfaced and caused a rift between Michelle and her best friends, Karen and Laura. The tension started when Michelle started dating a guy named Randy during their senior year. However, Michelle ended the relationship after only a month due to Randy's constant partying. Not long after the breakup, Karen started dating Randy and the two moved in together. Despite his relationship with Karen, Randy still had feelings for Michelle, which Karen discovered when she saw him flirting with Michelle. Michelle rejected Randy's advances, making it clear that she was not interested in rekindling their affair. Michelle advised Karen to reconsider her relationship with Randy and find someone better. Karen was furious, and Karen and Laura decided to confront Michelle at a neighboring park, causing rumors to spread once again. Michelle tried to reason with Karen and Laura, explaining that she would never betray their trust and that these were just false rumors from the previous year. Witnesses said Karen yelled at Michelle, threatened her with a broken beer bottle, pushed her to the ground, and slapped her before leaving with Laura. This encounter occurred just 10 days before Michelle was murdered. After the incident, Laura apologized to Michelle, and they decided to put their conflicts aside. However, Karen did not apologize to Michelle until October 1st, when she finally apologized for her reaction to Michelle. Michelle was grateful for the apology because she missed her friends so much. The three friends then made plans to meet at Stonehurst Park later that day. On October 1st, 1985, Michelle told her mother that she was going out with friends and was allowed to go on the condition that she be home by 6 p.m. Michelle waited outside for Laura to pick her up. When Laura arrived, they drove around a bit before arriving at Stonehurst Park, where they parked and waited for Karen to arrive. A few minutes had passed, and Karen had driven into the parking lot with another friend named Eva, who had been sitting in the passenger seat. As soon as Karen had arrived, she had driven her car very close to Laura's car and had rolled down the window. She had started shouting at Laura, who had rolled down her window and yelled back. Michelle and Eva had watched in amazement as their friends had angrily insulted each other, but Michelle had had no idea what the argument had been about. The situation had quickly escalated as Karen had backed away and sped off, with Laura following closely behind. They had driven recklessly for 45 minutes, heading north of the city and into the mountains. Michelle and Eva had begged them to calm down and stop, but Karen and Laura had been too angry to listen. Finally, they had turned into a parking lot that had led to a forest. Laura and Karen had gotten out of the car and continued their argument. Michelle had gotten out of the car hoping to intervene and stop the fight. However, as soon as they had stepped outside, Laura and Karen had suddenly stopped arguing and had turned their attention to Michelle. They had rushed towards her, leaving Michelle wondering what would happen next. Michelle had tried to get in the car, but Karen and Laura had been standing too close, leaving her trapped. They hadn't fought physically with her, but they had been angry with Michelle. Karen and Laura had told Michelle that they had staged the entire drama to lure her into the woods, where they could confront her. Karen and Laura had accused Michelle of sleeping with their boyfriends and had revealed that it had been they who had started the rumors. Karen and Laura had shouted at Michelle, refusing to listen to her explanation. When Michelle had become confused, Karen and Laura had grabbed her, pulled her out of the car, and had forced her to follow a nearby trail into the woods. Michelle had been much smaller than the other two girls, which had left her defenseless against Karen and Laura. who had continued to push her further down. Eva had remained in the car during the initial altercation, but had eventually gotten out and followed the group at a distance. She hadn't participated in the events that had taken place in the forest and hadn't been sure why she had been there. The group had continued into the woods, out of sight from the parking lot. When they had gone far enough, Laura had stopped and turned back to Michelle, who had been crying fearfully. Laura had then punched Michelle in the face. Karen had quickly joined in, and within seconds, Michelle had been on the ground, beaten and trampled. The attack had temporarily stopped when Laura had pulled out her knife. Grabbing Michelle's hair, she had begun cutting out sections of hair. Karen had wanted to participate, so she had started pulling Michelle's hair with her hands because she hadn't had a knife. Meanwhile, Eva had watched what had happened without doing anything to intervene. After cutting and pulling Michelle's hair, Laura and Karen had used rope to tie Michelle's hands behind her back and gagged her. A nearby river had caught Laura's attention, and she had stepped into the shallow water, smiling tauntingly at Michelle and daring her to enter. When Michelle hadn't moved, Karen had helped her up, forced her toward the river, and pushed her. Michelle had fallen down the hill, her face hitting the ground, rolling towards the river with her hands tied. Laura and Karen grabbed the girl and pulled her into the water. Eva had witnessed this and had run back up the driveway. However, when she had approached the cars, she had discovered they were locked. Since Eva had been too far away to get help from others, she had started walking back down the trail. But when she had heard a terrifying scream, she had stopped walking, turned around, and had run back to her car. There, Eva had lain on the ground in the fetal position and had waited about an hour until she had seen Laura and Karen return, soaking wet and laughing. But to her alarm, they had no longer been with Michelle. Then they left the forest, got in the car with Eva, and returned home. After the incident, for hours later, Laura even called Michelle's mother and asked after her. Laura talked to Michelle's mother, Irene Avila, and made up a story about dropping Michelle off with 3 boys in a blue Camaro after getting gas. Laura claimed that when she returned, Michelle and the 3 boys were gone. On October 4, 1985, Michelle's body was found face down in a stream in Big Tahunva Canyon, in Angeles National Forest, by a group of hikers. They then informed the police. Upon arriving at the scene, police found that Michelle had been drowned in 8 inches of water. Her long hair was cut off and there was a 4-foot-long piece of wood lying on top of her. Police found cigarettes, beer, and men's overalls near where Michelle's body was discovered. Karen and Laura told Michelle's parents and detectives that before her disappearance, Michelle had been traveling with 3 men in a blue Camaro. This made the items around the scene seem more reasonable. This false information caused detectives to search for bogus men for 3 years. Irene Avila said she did not suspect Karen or Laura were involved in her daughter's death because they both attended Michelle's funeral. Laura sent the family a condolence card and $20. Meanwhile, Karen had been living with Michelle's family for a long time to show support and help catch the murderer. In reality, Karen just wanted to oversee the investigation and keep the detectives from suspecting her. She also slept in Michelle's bed and had dinner with her family many nights, while she herself had participated in Michelle's murder. Karen seemed haunted by the murder. She regularly visited Michelle's grave several times a week, covered her room's walls with photos of Michelle and newspaper clippings about the crime, and constantly visited the creek where Michelle's body was found. One time, Karen told Irene that she saw Michelle's ghost. Detectives had no leads and the case languished for 3 years. By July 26, 1988, Eva Carambolo, the girl who had unwittingly participated in Michelle's murder, finally decided to report everything to the police. She explained the rumors that had been circulating about Michelle, the disagreements between her, Laura, and Karen, their anger, their jealousy, and every detail of the murder she knew. It took Eva a long time to report the incident because she was threatened by Laura and Karen. They told her not to say anything about what she saw, and she feared they would kill her. Finally, in March 1990, Karen and Laura were convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The jury did not believe the murder was premeditated, so they rejected the first-degree murder charge. After serving 21.5 years, Karen was released from prison on December 9, 2011. Laura was also released from prison in December 2012 after serving 22 years. Karen attempted to write a memoir about the murder and her life in prison. However, the book did not achieve the expected success. She also planned to make a film about her story but faced opposition from Avila's family. This incident prompted the state of California to pass Missy's Law, requiring organizations that help publish criminals' works to contact victims' families about those works. Missy's story has sparked much debate about the impact of bullying, the complexities of teenage relationships, and the importance of fostering an environment of empathy and kindness. Michelle Yvette, Missy, Avila's legacy will be one of resilience and hope. We hope that her memory will inspire us all to stand up against bullying, support those affected by betrayal, and work towards a future where understanding and empathy prevail. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Megan Landowski. Megan Landowski lived with her family in Portsmouth, Virginia, a bustling seaport town. Her family included her father, Chris Short, a Navy officer, her mother, Angela, and two other siblings. Chris Short had been transferred to a naval hospital in Portsmouth after a year stationed at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Chris's family felt relieved when they moved there. Megan Landowski, 16 years old, was the oldest in the family. When her family moved, she quickly signed up for dance classes. Megan had a deep passion for dance and showed outstanding talent from the beginning. She started with ballet and then expanded into many different genres. Megan's mother described her as a beautiful, friendly, and talented girl. Megan adapted quickly to her new learning environment at Woodrow Wilson High School. She had an attractive personality and easily made friends with her classmates. Although she attended a prestigious high school that specialized in dance, Megan wanted to attend a regular high school so she could hang out with friends in her neighborhood. She was described as vivacious and kind, with a natural tendency to connect with people. On Thursday, April 10, 2008, Megan woke up early to go to school. She chatted with her mother about the upcoming test before going to class. After saying goodbye to Angela, Megan went to school. Angela had no idea that this would be the last time she would see her daughter alive. Megan's school day ended early, and she went home. Angela had told Megan that she expected Megan's call when she got home. Upon arriving, Megan left a voicemail detailing how her day went, reassuring Angela that she had returned safely, and ending by telling Angela she loved her. Then she continued to prepare lunch for herself. However, things took a terrifying and disturbing turn around 4 p.m. Megan's stepfather, Chris, returned home and found the door open. Although he didn't worry at first, he knew Megan had been warned about leaving the door open, so he trusted that she wouldn't leave it unattended like that. He called her name, but there was only silence. When he entered the kitchen, he was faced with a horrifying sight: Megan lying motionless on the floor. Chris quickly called the police and reported the incident. Local detective Doug Funkhauser suddenly received an alarming call reporting the murder of a young girl in town. Immediately, he rushed to the location of the crime, Roberts Court in Portsmouth. When he approached the scene of the crime, he saw horrifying signs. The bloodstains on the door handle were very clear. When he entered the kitchen, he discovered a gruesome scene. The body of a young girl lay on the floor, her body seriously injured. Megan had suffered multiple stab wounds on her back, neck, face, and throat, and her mouth was sealed with tape. For Detective Doug, this case was one of the most brutal cases he had ever investigated. An initial investigation revealed no signs of forced entry. However, a leaf found inside the home matched a bush outside a first-floor window, suggesting that the killer may have entered through that window. In the upstairs bedroom, signs of a struggle were evident on the bed. Megan's underwear was on the floor, and a box of duct tape was found under the left corner of the bed, appearing to match the tape used to bind Megan's hands and face. Forensic experts found blood on the tape and other items, which were collected for further analysis, including pillows, sheets, and blankets. Additional forensic testing indicated that the bedroom was the scene of the sexual assault, as traces of the killer's semen were found on Megan's comforter and underwear. These findings suggested that Megan had been assaulted in the bedroom before the attack downstairs. Megan was found with a large number of injuries, 43 stab wounds, including 11 post-mortem. The forensic team also reported that Megan was naked from the waist down, with her hands bound behind her back with duct tape. The murder weapon was determined to be a missing kitchen knife. Investigators later found the knife in the sink and determined that the initial attack had occurred in the bedroom, but Megan had somehow escaped down the stairs. Investigators discovered that the perpetrator left footprints during the crime and then washed his hands in the kitchen sink. A second knife used in the crime was discovered in a nearby drain. Detectives quickly searched the neighborhood for witnesses, but no one provided any useful information. The killer appeared to have escaped undetected during the day. After the shock of their daughter's murder, Angela and Chris quickly alerted the police to their suspicions regarding the identity of the killer. They suspected an old acquaintance with a troubled past and believed he may be involved in the case. This person is Robert Hickey, a former colleague of Chris's in the Navy who had sexually assaulted Megan when she was 16. Chris and Robert had worked together as technicians and had become close friends, often inviting Robert and his family to their home. Megan's behavior changed dramatically after the abuse. She became withdrawn, and her grades began to decline. Chris noticed the change and asked her what was wrong, but she was initially reluctant to talk about it. Eventually, Megan confided in Chris, revealing that Robert had been sexually assaulting her in secret. Chris was furious and immediately cut off ties with the Hickeys. He also reported the abuse to the authorities. Around the same time, Megan's parents filed a lawsuit against Robert, just 5 months before she was murdered. The trial is pending, and Megan is expected to testify against him. Robert has a lot at stake, including his reputation and his freedom. Megan expressed concern that Robert might try to harm her to prevent her from testifying, and unfortunately, it appears that her fears have come true. When police searched Robert's home, they did not find any direct evidence linking him to Megan's murder. However, upon closer inspection of his computer, they discovered that he had attempted to erase the hard drive. Investigators were able to recover a recently deleted file containing sexually explicit images of minors. This discovery led to Robert being charged with possession of child pornography and becoming the prime suspect in Megan's murder. He was brought in for questioning, and authorities hope that he will confess to the crime. Robert was visibly nervous throughout the interview, but he insisted that he was at the Navy base on the day of Megan's murder. He denied any involvement and claimed he had not left the base. However, after verifying his alibi with his colleagues, the police discovered a gap in his timeline, raising the possibility that he might have been involved in the murder. The police obtained surveillance footage from the base but found no evidence that Robert had left. Despite this, he remained a suspect. To investigate further, a DNA sample was taken from Robert to compare with the DNA found at the crime scene. The results showed no match, ruling out Robert as the killer. This discovery left the police without any leads or suspects, leaving them frustrated. They then turned their attention to Chris, who had discovered Megan's body. After taking a DNA sample from Chris, he was quickly cleared. Megan's family members, including her younger brother, Corey, were also ruled out as suspects. The autopsy revealed that the murder was extremely brutal, indicating that the perpetrator had used extreme violence against Megan. Given Megan's popularity and gentle nature, it was difficult to narrow the investigation based on hostile relationships. This made the identity of the killer even more mysterious. The investigation into Megan's case did not produce any suspects. Detectives focused on Megan's life at school and interviewed each of her friends. Megan's best friend was interviewed but did not provide any useful information. Police then spoke to other friends and acquaintances from Woodrow Wilson High School and learned that Megan had dated a few people but nothing too serious. Although these men did not appear to be suspects, police asked them to provide DNA samples as a precaution. Meanwhile, experts retested DNA from the crime scene, which suggested that the killer was likely an African American male. For 6 months, no major developments were made, but that changed when a helpful classmate provided valuable information, a list of boys with whom Megan had occasionally flirted. Police looked through the list and found that they had spoken to all of the boys on the list, except for one, a 17-year-old named Robert Lee Barnes. Megan and Robert Barnes were both in the performing arts program at Churchill High School. Megan confided in her friend that she believed Robert might have a crush on her. At school, Robert was considered an excellent violinist, and as a student, he had always earned good grades, exhibited exemplary behavior, and had no disciplinary problems. As one of Megan's friends, Robert visited Megan's home several times, showing respectful behavior during these visits, and Megan's parents were very fond of him. When the police questioned Robert about Megan, he described her as a kind and pleasant person and was shocked that someone would want to harm her. He mentioned that he and Megan had attended shows together and occasionally hung out. However, towards the end of the interview, Robert's demeanor changed when he was asked to provide a DNA sample. Unlike Megan's other classmates, who were cooperative with the request, Robert hesitated and then refused, which aroused the suspicion of the investigators. Robert said that his mother did not allow the DNA test, but the police informed him that his parents' permission was not required because he was almost 18 years old. However, Robert still refused. This refusal made the investigators feel uncomfortable and suspicious that something was wrong with Robert. Therefore, after the interview ended, the investigators suggested that he talk to his mother and try again. The day after the initial investigation, Robert contacted the authorities to request a meeting. When asked if he had obtained his mother's permission, he replied that he had not, but he had given them a piece of his chewing gum as a DNA sample. Robert removed the gum from his mouth, placed it in a rubber glove, and gave it to the investigators. Despite this, the investigators remained suspicious of Robert. The DNA lab then contacted the detective to inquire about the sample's source. After confirming that Robert had indeed placed the gum in the glove, the lab questioned whether he had been continuously monitored while providing the gum. This investigation was prompted by the surprising fact that the DNA on the gum matched that of a woman. It turned out that Robert had switched the gum he was chewing with another piece before handing it to the investigators. On October 23, 2008, Robert was called in for questioning again, this time with his mother. When confronted with the DNA findings, Robert was asked about the chewing gum. He made a critical mistake by stating, "This happened on Thursday." Up until that point, none of the individuals interviewed by the police knew the exact date and time of the murder. When the officers pointed this out to Robert, he provided an implausible explanation. According to Robert, on that Thursday, Megan had asked him to visit her home. Upon his arrival, Robert claimed to have found Megan being held at gunpoint by a masked individual. The alleged attacker held the gun to Robert, forcing him to tie Megan up. Robert then fabricated a story that he had been compelled to sexually assault Megan. He further claimed that they all went downstairs, where the attacker stabbed Megan after obtaining a knife. Ultimately, Robert stated that the attacker had forced him to inflict an injury on himself to ensure his blood would be present at the crime scene. Robert fabricated a false story to portray himself as the victim and to explain away any incriminating evidence. However, the police did not believe his account. When presented with evidence of footprints found at the scene, the investigator asked Robert why only his footprints were found and not those of the person he claimed had attacked him. Robert's mother intervened, telling Robert to stop talking and asserting that Robert was a good and innocent person. The police then took a DNA sample from Robert. The DNA analysis showed a match between Robert's DNA and the DNA found at the crime scene. As a result, Robert Barnes was arrested for the murder of Megan Landowski. According to police, Robert likely broke into the house through a window that afternoon, surprising Megan in her bedroom. He then attacked her, and when she tried to escape downstairs, he chased her, stabbing her multiple times with a kitchen knife, even after she was dead. After the crime, Robert left the scene and continued his life as if nothing had happened. Investigators believe that Robert became unhealthily obsessed with Megan, who only wanted a friendship. When Robert's romantic advances were rejected, he turned to coercion, which led to a tragic end. In September 2009, Robert accepted a plea deal that allowed him to be tried as a juvenile, despite having just turned 18. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated sexual assault. As a result, Robert Lee Barnes was sentenced to 42 years in prison and is currently serving his sentence at Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia. Regardless of the motive behind Robert's actions, whether it was love, lust, bitterness, or the pain of rejection, none of these reasons justify his horrific crimes against the person he claimed to love and care for. Robert chose the path of destruction, taking the life of an innocent person and ruining his own life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Turpin family. David Turpin was born on October 17, 1961, in Princeton, West Virginia, to Betty and James Turpin. David came from a devoutly religious family and had a relatively normal upbringing. During his high school years at Princeton High School, David participated in various activities, including Bible Club, Chess Club, Science Club, and a cappella choir. David enrolled at Virginia Tech University after graduating from high school to pursue a degree in electrical engineering in Blacksburg, Virginia. Thanks to his exceptional skills in computer engineering, David landed jobs at leading defense technology companies such as Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin. Louise Turpin was born on May 24, 1968, in Princeton, West Virginia. She is the eldest of 6 children of Wayne Robinette, a preacher, and Phyllis Robinette, who worked at Walmart and sang in the church choir. The Robinette children's home environment was tense due to frequent conflicts between their parents, which led to harsh treatment. Louise and her sisters were sexually abused by a family member as children. This traumatic experience was a secret kept within the family. According to Louise's younger sister, Elizabeth, Louise played a protective, gentle, kind, and nurturing role. She comforted her siblings during their parents' violent conflicts and protected them from abusive relatives. At the age of 15, Louise met 22-year-old David Turpin at church. They kept their relationship a secret for fear of Louise's parents' reaction. However, when the truth was discovered, Louise's mother Phyllis eventually accepted their relationship, partly because David came from a devout Christian family and Louise convinced her. David and Louise decided to keep their relationship a secret from her father, Wayne, knowing that he would be furious if he found out. In January 1985, 23-year-old David visited Louise's school, Princeton High School, where he had graduated 5 years earlier. He convinced the staff to let him take Louise out of class, and she left willingly with him. They began their journey south, planning to elope. When Louise's parents discovered she was missing, they called the police. Before the police could catch up with them, the couple headed to Texas, where they planned to secretly marry. However, when they were stopped, they agreed to return to West Virginia. When they returned home, Wayne and Phyllis's reactions were surprisingly calm. Initially, Wayne was angry with Phyllis for allowing their daughter, Louise, to date David. However, when he saw how much they loved each other, he realized that it would be difficult to separate them. So Wayne agreed to let them marry on February 11, 1985, in a small ceremony in Pearisburg, Virginia. 2 years later, Louise's parents divorced and Louise's father, Wayne, took a job as the chief deputy assessor of Mercer County. After marrying David, Louise began to live more independently and freely. Louise was happy with her new life. In 1988, Louise gave birth to her first daughter, and 18 months later, their second child was born. David was then transferred to General Dynamics, and his family moved to Fort Worth, Texas. They settled in a modern neighborhood called Meadow Creek. Louise's family lived a lavish lifestyle thanks to David's high-paying job. Louise, eager to show off her family's newfound wealth, invited relatives from West Virginia to visit. Having grown up on a tight budget, Louise was happy to show off her current success. To make their visit comfortable, David and Louise paid all the expenses. The Louises welcomed a baby boy in 1991, bringing them even more joy. However, by 1992, the Louises were in debt. Despite their financial struggles, they continued to live a lavish lifestyle. In 1993, Louise became pregnant with her fourth child, a girl. In 1994, Louise's oldest daughter started first grade at Meadow Creek Elementary School. She looked neglected, with greasy, unkempt hair, dirty clothes, and poor hygiene. Her appearance made her the target of teasing by her classmates. In 1995, Louise's family welcomed a fifth child, a boy. Louise's family seemed carefree despite their financial difficulties and continued to splurge on luxuries, treating relatives to expensive meals. When Louise's younger sister Elizabeth joined them on their 1996 vacation in Fort Worth, they stopped at a casino in Louisiana on the way. While at the casino, Louise asked Elizabeth to babysit the children so she and David could gamble. They asked Elizabeth not to tell anyone about this, knowing that it was against their Christian values. During this visit, David and Louise's gambling led to losses. Tensions became apparent when David claimed that Louise had a serious gambling addiction and blamed Louise for their financial difficulties. While staying with Louise's family, Elizabeth was shocked by the family's disturbing behavior. David and Louise did not show much affection for their children and tightly controlled every aspect of their lives. Elizabeth was particularly concerned about David's behavior, as he often invaded Elizabeth's privacy by entering the bathroom while she was showering, making her feel uncomfortable and insecure. In May 1997, the Tuppins had their fifth child. By September of that year, concerns about their eldest daughter and the possible signs of sexual abuse began to grow. In 1998, the family had a sixth child. Although David had a well-paying job, the family's financial situation worsened due to their frequent gambling, which caused significant financial strain. In the spring of 1999, the eldest daughter dropped out of school, as did the other children. Louise and David announced that they were homeschooling their children. In late 1998, the bank foreclosed on the family's home in Fort Worth, so Louise and David moved to Rio Vista, Texas, a less populated area. The new home that Louise and David had in Rio Vista was in serious disrepair when they moved in. It was dirty, stained, and smelled bad. Before moving into the Rio Vista home, the Louises had their seventh child. Over the next 6 years, the family added 5 more children. Over time, the parents, David and Louise Turpin, became increasingly irresponsible and abusive. They physically harmed their children, beating, choking, and whipping them with belts, often for trivial reasons such as not letting them go to the bathroom. The children were also severely neglected in terms of personal hygiene, with some only bathing once a year. Despite purchasing nutritious food, David and Louise often withheld food from their children, forcing them to starve. The parents would tease their children by leaving uneaten meals in plain sight. Instead, the children were fed cheap frozen meals, resulting in severe malnutrition. This neglect was evident in the children's slow development, pale skin, and youthful appearances that did not match their actual ages. In 2004, Louise's family moved to a nicer trailer, leaving behind their old home in Rio Vista, which had become uninhabitable due to years of neglect, garbage accumulation, and rodent infestation. In 2008, Louise Turpin, then 40, had a shocking conversation with her sister Teresa. Louise revealed that she and her husband David had abandoned their Christian education and stopped attending church. Instead, they had become interested in Satanism and used Ouija boards. Louise also confessed that she and David had engaged in wife swapping, a lifestyle that involved having sex with other couples they met online. What was even more disturbing was that they often left their younger children at home, in the care of their older siblings, while they went out to meet strangers they had met online. This drastic change in Louise, who had always been caring and responsible, worried her older sister Teresa. Despite their financial struggles, Louise's family often went to Disneyland in matching outfits, taking lots of happy photos. Louise made sure to send these photos to her family and her parents. The only indication to Louise's family that the children were okay was through these photos, which showed them appearing happy despite being very thin. In 2014, Louise's family moved to Paris, California, about 20 miles north of Murrieta. By this time, the child abuse had reached an extremely violent level. David and Louise had tied their children to their beds with ropes. If the children tried to escape, the ropes were replaced with chains and locks. The children were locked in the room for around 20 hours a day, forced to endure the stench that permeated the air. In 2015, the family welcomed their 13th and final child. Soon after, the family traveled to Las Vegas to celebrate David and Louise's 30th wedding anniversary. Faced with the horrors of their living conditions, Louise and David's 17-year-old daughter made the brave decision to seek help by reporting the abuse to the police. She climbed out of the window and quickly called the police on the phone. During a tense 20-minute 911 call, she detailed the deplorable living conditions and the countless abuses she and her siblings endured. With photographs of their desperate situation as evidence, she waited for the police to arrive. When police arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene: a severely malnourished girl who appeared to be about 10 years old. The girl led police to the front door, where they found Louise. Upon entering the home, police immediately smelled a strong stench that made it difficult to breathe. Despite the strong odor, police continued to investigate and made a horrifying discovery: 3 younger children chained to beds. The home was in a state of extreme disarray, with trash and dirt covering the floor because there was no toilet access. Police quickly took the younger children to Riverside University Medical Center for evaluation and care, while the older children were taken to Corona Regional Medical Center. David and Louise Turpin were arrested on January 14, 2018, for child abuse and torture. Within 4 days, they faced multiple charges. Each of them was charged with 12 counts of torture, 7 counts of abuse, 6 counts of child abuse and neglect, and 12 counts of false imprisonment. David Turpin also faces a separate charge of lewd conduct with a child under 14. Among their children, a 2-year-old child showed no obvious signs of abuse. In addition to being abused, the children were treated extremely cruelly by their parents. They suffered severe physical abuse that resulted in neurological damage. The children of Louise and David lacked basic life skills and knowledge. Although their parents, David and Louise Turpin, bought them toys, the children were not allowed to play with them. They were forced to stay up until the early hours of the morning, often until 4 or 5 a.m., and were not allowed to go to bed before that time. In 2018, the court took action against the Turpin parents. On January 24th, the judge ordered that David and Louise have no contact with their children for 3 years, and that all contact be through their attorney. On June 21st of the same year, the court decided that there was enough evidence against David and Louise to proceed to trial. The trial concluded on February 22, 2019. On that day, David and Louise Turpin pleaded guilty to 14 counts including torture, abuse, false imprisonment, and child endangerment. During the trial, David and Louise had an emotional reunion with their children. The children appeared to have forgiven their parents and were affectionate toward David and Louise. Each expressed a wish for their parents to be well and shared that their lives were going well. David and Louise sincerely apologized for their past actions and expressed their deep love for their children, wishing them success in life. David and Louise were subsequently sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As of 2022, Louise, 53, and David, 60, are both eligible for parole in 2037. The severe abuse and neglect in their home shocked the community and beyond. The community came together to support the children, giving them hope and a new start in life.